of me, I love them all. And even if I get less and less time to play them as I get older, I will never stop enjoying the time that I do spend with them. But in the last few years, I've probably played less new games than I ever have before. They just haven't been able to scratch the itch like they used to, and it took me a while to figure out why. At first I thought I was just getting older, more pessimistic, that there are things that bother me about games now that I might have overlooked as a kid. Or maybe with the number of fantastic games that I've played over the years, maybe I just have higher standards now. But the truth is, it has nothing to do with me. I keep saying that I'm gonna play all these other games that I haven't gotten around to yet, and yet every time my girlfriend sticks her head in my room to see if I'm actually doing that, it's always the same story.
What are you doing?
Huh?
What are you doing?
This is my problem. Despite currently being in a golden era of video game releases, I just can't seem to move on from one game in particular. It's just that nothing's quite been the same since Elden Ring. I reckon it's unusual for a lot of gamers to have a certain world they like to revisit. For me, Elden Ring has been on my hard drive for 3.5 years, and no game I've ever played keeps reeling me back to it quite like this one does. And on my most recent revisit back to it, I really started to think about why? Why is it that I have this whole back catalogue of games that I still need to play, including the other Souls games by the way, but yet they continue to collect dust while I return to Elden Ring over and over and over again? So on my last playthrough, I played with the intent to get to the bottom of what makes the game so special. What is it about this game in particular that has managed to bury itself so deep into my brain? And I realized that it isn't anything in particular. I still don't really have an answer. I can't put my finger on exactly what it does so well because I don't think Elden Ring does any one thing leagues better than any of its contemporaries, and yet somehow the game as a whole still is. So rather than coming up with some objective analytical breakdown video that honestly plenty of others have done before me, I instead want to work through what parts of the game stood out to me on my last playthrough and retrace my steps through my experience with the game as a whole. And I'm hoping by doing that, maybe I can finally understand why Elden Ring has sunk its hooks in so deeply to me. Before Elden Ring, I had never played any of the Souls games, just because, if I'm being completely honest, they really did not appeal to me. And can you really blame me? The reputation of these games is that they are notoriously unforgiving and difficult, designed specifically to test your mental stamina. And geez, the way people talk about these games.
I love the pain.
The intensity it takes to really enjoy and get the most out of these games can be kind of intimidating to a lot of new players. So you can understand, from the outside looking in on the series, being pitched on a game's brutal punishment just wasn't something I found that alluring. But in 2022, when the reviews for Elden Ring came rolling in, I finally decided to give From Software a chance to win me over. I figured I've played games. I'm not opposed to cranking the difficulty every once in a while. How hard could it be? And I hated it.
I just can't do it.
I can't put my finger on exactly what it was I disliked about it so much, but I just couldn't connect with it on account of it being so different than anything else I'd played. I felt oddly loose and weightless during combat in a way that I didn't with other games, because despite From Software's design being massively influential on the industry at large, it still maintains a distinct feeling and style that is wholly unique from anything else.
Fucking bullshit! How is he fucking hitting the dodge button? He's a fucking AI.
In other words, I had never felt so shit at a video game that I expected to be better at. And on top of feeling like a fish out of water with the combat, I also found that Elden Ring's open world design was actually more demoralizing than I would have found with a more linear experience like Dark Souls, which I know is the exact opposite of the prevailing sentiment in the community. But for me, instead of feeling like I could just go do something else when a boss halted my progress, I instead felt like it didn't matter where I went or what I did, I still sucked. Because of the open world design, I never felt the game really pressuring me all that much to persevere through a tough boss when the option was always there to just leave and level up somewhere else. Which kind of meant I kept robbing myself of the opportunity to get better and actually overcome the frustration that I was persistently feeling. After everything I had heard about From Software, I was so disappointed that it didn't grab me like I wanted it to. So after a few hours of wandering through the lands between, I put the game down. I forget exactly why I picked it back up, but it was sometime after some people started calling it one of the greatest games of all time that I decided to give it another chance. I figured with all the adoration that the game was receiving, it was definitely me who was missing something, not the game. Some way, somehow, I knew it was my fault that I didn't love it. And so if I was going to, this is the mindset I was going to adopt. In Australia, we have a saying, we're not here to fuck spiders. There's actually a few versions of that, but it just means we're not here to mess around or do anything that isn't exactly the task at hand. I was not gonna back down. I was not gonna give up against any boss, no matter what. And keep in mind, given I still very much sucked at the game, this was probably a horrible mindset to adopt so religiously, but there I went anyway, and I started a new game with this newfound conviction. And while I couldn't really do anything about the Grafted Scion, since it doesn't let you attempt it more than once, the Tree Sentinel, oh, I could take that. Now, I understand and understood at the time that the Tree Sentinel is not a boss you are really supposed to beat so early in the game, and me attempting it is a bit like a Jack Russell nipping at the hooves of a horse. The Tree Sentinel's placement here is specifically to teach the player that not every boss you encounter is one you are going to be prepared for at that moment, that it's okay to walk away and come back when you're actually ready. In this instance, especially if you are a beginner like me, you are supposed to walk away. But no, I, a player who died multiple times to the Soldier of Godric, would not leave this ditch until I did the impossible. After the first 20 or 30 deaths in a row, I lost count. It felt like a completely insurmountable challenge, but it was nonetheless a challenge I had started. And in my mind, it doesn't beat me when it kills me. It only beats me if I quit. So for several exhausting, demoralizing hours, I grinded this boss, honing what little skills I had in a boss fight I had absolutely no business being in. But slowly, I started to get better. The first thing I learned was not to panic. I learned which attacks I could and couldn't dodge through and when my openings were to attack myself, how many swings I could safely wail on it before I even, by complete accident, learnt this little maneuver I could use to give myself more openings. And ever so gradually, I began putting the pieces together of what I had learnt, and with each attempt, whittling his health down just a little bit further and further and further, until finally, I did it. Words don't describe the feeling of relief, disbelief, and accomplishment I felt in that final blow. I can't even guess how many times I faced the Tree Sentinel, but it was only in that last handful did winning the fight even feel doable. Throughout the countless thousands of hours I have spent playing video games in my life, I can't think of a single moment within any of them that was more personally meaningful to me. It was in that moment that From Software won me over and I was absolutely in love with Elden Ring. And the best part of it all was that I had barely even started. In that first playthrough, I was so enamored by everything the game was doing so well that it kind of just washed over me in a way that I didn't really consciously notice or think about. I was just too busy having too much fun. I just knew it was good and I didn't really have the words to describe how. If you were to try and explain to someone who's never played games before why you love Red Dead Redemption 2, you'd probably say it has a gripping story with incredible characters and writing and an absolutely gorgeous open world that you can get lost in for hours. Most titles have an easy elevator pitch like that, but with Elden Ring, you know what I mean? Like, what I was loving about it was far more abstract and personal than what other games bring to the table. It's not what the game was doing that made me feel a certain way, it's what I was doing in the game that made me feel a certain way. And that's kind of harder to articulate. But that hasn't stopped me from really wondering what that elevator pitch would be. And yes, this is going to be a long fucking elevator ride. But it's been long enough for me now, and I've thought about it enough that I think I've figured it out. I think there's 7 main reasons that I and so many others have fallen so deeply in love with this particular experience. And it all starts right here. That first fight with the Tree Sentinel taught me everything I need to know about Elden Ring and From Software games in general. No matter how bullshit, absurd, or unfair a fight might feel, it is always possible. If I was patient enough, I could overcome anything. That's the lesson I learned from that fight, that I needed to focus far more on improving myself rather than my stats and abilities. Get good, which famously can be a punishing design philosophy that really risks turning some players away. But for the ones who stay and persevere all the way through Margit, Godric, Radahn, Renala, Rykard, Mohg, Morgott, Malekith, Godfrey, Radagon, Elden Beast, Malenia, there's nothing else in gaming quite like it for me, other than maybe Ogdo Bogdo. But it's the fact that I can rattle off those names and you have likely a distinct visceral memory of facing each one of them, along with countless others. I just think that speaks to how special Elden Ring's challenge is, and it made me understand why the community is the way that it is. Shared triumph. And I know that a bunch of random people waffling away about builds and bosses in a Reddit thread, that seems like an element of the experience that's removed from the game itself, but it's kind of not. Constantly seeing the phantoms of other players navigating the path alongside me, or the helpful or not so helpful messages they litter around the world, that brings it to life in such an interesting way that in this single player game, I never really feel like I'm playing it by myself. Walking into a boss arena and seeing it absolutely soaked in the bloodstains of my fallen brothers and sisters, that is always a chilling, intimidating sight that I feel unprepared for the beatdown I'm about to receive. But every time seeing those bloodstains, it kind of makes me want to rise to avenge them, because these people clearly didn't quit, so neither would I. The thing is though, everything I've said about the game so far isn't all that unique to Elden Ring. Most of this stuff is baked into From Software's DNA, and plenty of those ideas have seeped into the industry at large as well. What makes Elden Ring different though, is how it takes From Software's very specific but brilliant existing formula and grafts it to some of the industry's most successful ideas. And the first and easily the most obvious one is the open world. And not this open world, but this one. Elden Ring being influenced by Breath of the Wild is pretty well documented at this point, but I think so much so, and with how obvious that influence is, that it is kind of hard to talk about Elden Ring at all without at least giving Zelda a nod. Breath of the Wild and subsequently Elden Ring heavily leans into the idea that you should always look under the stairs. I forget exactly where I first heard the phrase, but it just refers to the practice of checking underneath the staircase you just walk down, because the developers will usually hide some sort of useful or valuable item, despite the design of the level clearly coaxing the player to continue moving past it. It's a way of encouraging exploration by tucking value into places that players might otherwise overlook, effectively rewarding players for their own natural curiosity. In an open world game like Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild, looking under the stairs is far less specific than actually looking under a staircase. The game doesn't outright tell you where you are supposed to go, so actually progressing necessitates that you navigate your own path through the open world to a certain extent, and only really relies on discrete visual cues and clever framing to nudge you in the right direction. And because of that design, you are basically forced to engage with and explore the environment a lot more actively than you would in a game like Assassin's Creed. So with your eyes already on the horizon, it's pretty much inevitable that you'll see something that's worth investigating that's clearly unrelated to the main objective. And the beauty of how these games are designed is that you're never more than like a minute away from actually finding something interesting. And that's just it. Finding. Like actually finding. Because there's next to no hand-holding, no map markers or waypoints, it makes the stuff that you do find, whether that be dungeons, bosses, or other useful items, they feel like genuine discoveries. Because nothing other than your natural curiosity led you to find them. This obviously means that an absolutely enormous amount of the content will be missed in the process, but the risk of not finding something is what makes finding something actually special. The game's most famous example of this being the Schiefer Riverwell in Mistwood, a relatively unassuming building that's still conspicuous enough amongst its surrounding environment that it's worth investigating anyway. And yet at the bottom of it is this. The sheer idea that I could have completely missed this had I not noticed this boring building makes it feel like a truly miraculous discovery. And it made me wonder, what else is the game hiding? What else is it not telling me? This looking under the stairs concept obviously isn't just unique to open world games like Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild. Most notably, I think it might be best used in survival horror, where you often have to decide between progressing to safety or risking further anxiety to look around for items that might help you in the next area, adding a thick risk-reward factor to exploration. But unlike Breath of the Wild, Elden Ring implements this version of the concept as well, with From Software's classic soul retrieval mechanic. The risk of dying too far off the beaten track can result in your runes getting stuck in some tough to reach places, or guarded by a battalion of very annoying enemies. But risky exploration is still often worth the effort, and sometimes it's not. This whole explorative part of the game is still such a perfect, serene counterweight to the high-stress component of Elden Ring's boss encounters. And while it might not be the most exciting part of the game, it is easily the part you get the most lost in because the world building is outstanding. Elden Ring is cut from a lot of the same cloth as Bethesda's Elder Scrolls and Fallout.
You need to leave!
Yeah, look, I know, just stay with me for a second. For all of Bethesda's jank and bugs, their worlds still feel incredibly immersive and atmospheric because they feel so lived in, with most of the story and lore being told through the environment. Whenever you stumble into a crumbling ruin or abandoned family home, you still feel like you've stumbled onto a story that was there long before you ever arrived. These games really feel like and sell the idea that they are worlds that exist without you in it. It's the whole reason it works, that they're more than just a playground that's built for the player to explore. And that immersion into the world is why you can just waste hours away wandering through it. Now, Elden Ring taps into much of the same concept, but it covers it with FromSoft's more cryptic coat of paint. And here's the thing, I'll be completely honest, I don't really care about the lore. I know that these people are all related and that this lady is like sick or something and mean. But I'm not one of these people using item descriptions to piece together an entire timeline. And if you're into that, that's fine. I'm not here to judge. Some people collect stamps, others like to read stuff in the video games they play. That's just not why I'm here. But personally for me, I don't feel like I need to have all the answers for everything in the environment for me to still be incredibly intrigued by it. Because even without getting really stuck into the lore, it's still so evident that it's there, adding this dense layer of genuine authenticity and consistency to the world that is just dripping with atmosphere as a result. I mean, look at this. I feel like I'm in a painting. This is going to be a really quick point despite it being really no less important than the other ones, but notice the aesthetic diversity on display here. Limgrave, Caelid, Liurnia, Altus, the mountaintops, even smaller areas like Nokron and the Halig Tree, each one feels so completely different, and that kind of variety makes it sort of easier to mentally organize. So each chapter of the game as you progress through it is made far more memorable than it would have been if it had taken place in a more uniform setting. And again, designing a massive open world with this philosophy isn't an unusual practice in gaming, and likely another thing that Miyazaki has partly adapted from Breath of the Wild. But I feel the visual variety is stepped up here in a way that makes those first steps into these environments feel just as exhilarating as beating the boss at the end of them. They are simply jaw-dropping. A game's soundtrack is something I think that often goes underappreciated when considering the replayability of certain games. Skyrim, Breath of the Wild, Red Dead Redemption, The Last of Us, Minecraft, even shooters like Battlefield and Halo, we tend to talk about these games' greatest strengths being within the gameplay. And obviously, yeah, duh. But every single one of them has absolutely banging soundtracks that play a monumental role in how we remember and think about being in those worlds. Elden Ring is no different in this regard. The music and sound design are incredible, but it is somewhat unique in that it isn't as memorably iconic as those other soundtracks are. And I don't think it's meant to be. Soundtracks typically fall under the category of non-diegetic sound, which just refers to sound that doesn't actually exist within the world. Like Batman can't hear his own theme. There are are some exceptions where the soundtracks are diegetic, like previously mentioned in Fallout, where it's tied to an in-game radio station that the characters listen to. But Elden Ring does something really interesting where it kind of blends the two together. It is still a non-diegetic soundtrack, but if you listen to it on Apple Music or Spotify, it doesn't land quite the same way as those other ones do because, well, you sort of just have to be there. It's a soundtrack that strangely seems to emanate from the landscape in front of you. And I'm not talking about ambient sounds from the environment like birds or trees. It is still music that you're listening to, but it somehow gives the impression that that music is what you might hear if you were actually standing there. It's a really weird, almost hypnotic effect. But as a result, I can't think of another soundtrack that's made me feel more engrossed, more immersed in a game's world than the one in this game. So far in talking about the things that Elden Ring does so well, we've discussed the difficulty and the community that has built around that, the sense of exploration and discovery, the world building and atmosphere, the stunning visual and aesthetic variety, and the unbelievable music and sound design. But here's the thing, all of that is just the stage. And it would mean a lot less if that stage felt the same every time you replayed it. But what makes it feel different, what makes it endlessly replayable, is how much of your experience changes based on how you decide to approach it, right from the very beginning. Your experience with Elden Ring each time you play it is so dependent on the build you commit to making because the stats, weapons, spells, even basic playstyles are so varied that you're not just rerunning the same game again, you're essentially playing a new one. Bosses you might have been thrashed by the first time are now an absolute cakewalk, and others you previously trivialized are now a brick wall. This shift in exactly where you face the most challenge often changes how you approach the game altogether. It might result in you fighting bosses not just in a completely different way, but also maybe even a completely different order. It might mean that you spend more time in certain areas that you didn't previously, or take a different route through the lands between entirely. All of this gives you a chance to find new weapons, armor, spells, quests, bosses, or even new areas entirely. This is the main reason why returning to Elden Ring is so uniquely rewarding and exciting every time, and why no matter how many times I come back to it, it just never gets stale. Most of the time for me, my allure back to a certain game comes from just one or two elements in it that I found particularly memorable. But in Elden Ring, most of my allure back to it comes specifically from the experiences I feel I haven't had yet. It's how I don't know how all of these elements are going to come together for me on my next playthrough. And it isn't just that they all feed into each other in a way that makes Elden Ring greater than just the sum of them together, but also how those elements seem to rearrange themselves in how I perceive and remember them each time I go back. It's how the game always stays so fresh and why it's just so fucking addictive. Which kind of brings me all the way back to the main question that I keep circling around. Why can't I move on? There's so many new and old games out there that I still haven't played that I'm sure I would absolutely love. And as I said earlier, Elden Ring doesn't do any one thing that much better than anything else. There's a number of games out there that do any one of these things just as well or even better. But none of them do all of these things at once quite as well as Elden Ring does. For me, it's this perfect blend of everything I've ever loved about games, distilled into one complete experience. And that's why I keep returning to it. Whenever I need any of these itches scratched, why would I go anywhere other than the lands between? However, you'd think after 3 years, I'd have exhausted everything the game has to offer. Every nook, every cranny, every cave, catacomb, build and boss, but I haven't. In fact, there's a pretty massive thing I haven't done yet, and frankly, I'm kind of embarrassed to be making an Elden Ring video without having this one very important credential. I mentioned before that a boss doesn't beat you when it kills you, it only beats you if you quit. Malenia, Blade of Miquella, is the only boss who beat me. And I know that Malenia is supposedly not just one of the most difficult bosses that From Software has ever produced, but some people even hold her up as one of the most difficult challenges in gaming's history. And I can't say for sure if that's true. I know for me, she is the only boss in any game I've ever played that I haven't been able to beat. I only faced her in my first playthrough, and I rammed my head against that wall for I don't even know how long, but it was long enough for me to start enjoying the game less and less each time I got on. And I don't know if it was an issue with the build I had or my strategy, or I just wasn't good enough, but I just could not break through. Getting more and more frustrated certainly wasn't helping either, and eventually she wore me out. I just wanted to move on to the next part of the game, so I gave in. I summoned the Mimic Tear, a tool I had not resorted to using for the entire game, and she went down after 2 attempts. It was demoralizing. After facing her that many times, to have it all end with me just giving up to beat her in that way, for me, was heartbreaking. It was the only time in this game that I felt truly, utterly defeated. And in every playthrough since, I've avoided her. Not because I was afraid, I wasn't, but just because I knew how much of a challenge she was, and I didn't want to commit hours upon hours of my time to that exhausting fight again, even though I knew I had to do it at some point. In my head, it's like changing the light bulb in my bathroom. Like, I am gonna do it, I don't know, I haven't gotten around to it yet. But the truth is, I was putting it off. I knew it would be frustrating, I knew it would be painful, and I didn't want the smoke. In other words, I had forgotten that it's worth it. I had forgotten what this had felt like. But on this last playthrough, I decided to go back to the Haligtree to finish what I should have done years ago. Once again, I would not leave this ditch until I did the impossible. So here I was again, round 2, and just like before, I got absolutely annihilated. Even after hundreds of hours in the Lands Between and years of experience against every boss the game could throw at me, Malenia was still every bit the monster I remembered she was. The simple fact that she heals whenever she hits you means that making any mistake at all is incredibly punishing. And the fact that there's nothing else in the game that really prepares you for the flurry of moves she throws at you means that you are going to get hit. You are going to have to painstakingly relearn strategies you've spent the whole game relying on. And just when you've finally started to figure it out, guess what? New phase, new moves, full heal, wings, Scarlet Rot, the works. And all I could think was, again,
I don't know how I'm gonna beat that.
how on earth is this fair? But this time, I kept my composure.
Fuck!
I stayed calm.
Why? That's horseshit.
Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I didn't quit. Every failed attempt, every half-second mistimed roll, every brutal Phase 2 death, it all slowly started to click.
Oh my god!
I wasn't getting lucky, I was learning. That slow, painful, beautiful process that From Software games do better than anything else, it was happening again.
Yes!
When I landed that final hit, it was unlike anything the game had offered me up to that point. After 3 years, I'd done it. I'd finally done it. And in that moment, it wasn't even about Malenia anymore, it was about me. Because the thing that makes Elden Ring so special isn't just that it challenges you, it's that it teaches you how to rise to meet challenge. And not just in the way that the other Souls games do, but it's the fact that its open world affords you the freedom to choose. That you can walk away, to shy away, to avoid certain challenges altogether like I did. That is what makes it special. No one forced me to be here. No one asked me to do this. I chose to dig deep and muster up the will to face something that I didn't think I could. And I think there's a really valuable, real-life lesson to be appreciated with that. Every fight, every failure, every hard-won victory rewrites the way you think, the way you move, the way you approach things inside and outside the game. That's why it never gets old, that's why I can't move on. Even after all this time, the game still finds new ways to humble me, to surprise me, to make me feel something real in a way that other games don't. I mean, in the moment that I beat Malenia, I put my controller down and I could feel my heart beating so hard I felt like my ribs were rattling, I had goosebumps, my ears rang. And maybe that's what keeps me coming back. Not the rewards, not the power fantasy, but just that electric feeling of standing up one more time when you probably shouldn't have been able to, when you didn't think you could. In the end, I didn't just beat Malenia, I remembered why I fell in love with Elden Ring, and maybe why I fell in love with games in the first place. Thank you so much for watching my video to the end, and let me know in the comments what game you guys can't seem to move on from. I know that this has been a really big departure from my previous videos, but ultimately, I just want to make videos about stuff that interests me and stuff that I'm passionate about. And so I'm kind of just hoping that you guys can share in that passion regardless of what it is. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know by leaving a like or consider subscribing for more videos like this. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.
Because it demonstrates the suspension of disbelief required to enjoy the game, and it's the perfect beginner weapon because, due to its ricocheting abilities, it functions best without pinpoint accuracy, meaning even the most inept players can feel powerful out of the gate. With our tutorial complete, and upon receiving our first introduction to Prosperity, we can see the point where New Dawn officially separates itself from Far Cry 5. Something players noted when playing Far Cry 5 was that it was almost too open. I recently spoke with a friend who voiced this exact criticism, and psychologically, this makes sense. When a game presents you with borderline infinite options, you might begin experiencing a choice paralysis. Even I noted how open Far Cry 5's narrative was, though I didn't exactly have a problem with it. Everything you did furthered the story, and while the upside to this was a kind of narrative cohesion that the games hadn't yet seen at that point, the downside was a lacking sense of progression within the story. I go over how Far Cry 5 found interesting ways to remedy that issue in my video on the game, so for now, let's look at how New Dawn changes that linearity, and how it remixes the themes we saw in a pre-nuclear Hope County. Community was at the heart of Far Cry 5's resistance. You were always recruiting people who could help the cause, and they often played a significant role in the story. However, in New Dawn, they have a more active role in the thematic sense, but are seldom present in the narrative past the second act. Let's start with the strengths. Prosperity is a great looking home base, and our upgrades typically result in, albeit minor, changes to the buildings. More notably is that the specialists we recruit, often characters from the previous game, will begin hanging around, providing dialogue and a sense of community that I didn't feel in 5. Much of this came from the base building, something games rarely suffer from, but it also came from the world. There would be moments where I would see characters interacting with the world in a similar way that I was. We get word that Pastor Jerome is hunting down highwaymen with a pump shotgun, and sure, it's a nice way of pushing us towards his quest, but further, when attacking a base, I could see Jerome starting his own attack. Not only did this aid in my liberation efforts, but it made the world feel alive and coherent. Another instance is when rescuing Thomas Rush. He will explain that some people with supernatural powers and different bows were attacking camps, and we can actually see those people too, and they happen to be fighters from New Eden. Their powers could come from Joseph's Tree or some other blessing, making this a neat instance of foreshadowing and creating an immersive world. Most importantly, this sells the idea of this being not exactly a liberation, but a resistance. Far Cry 3 and 4 were both games where you were showing up to a place that was foreign to you and staking your claim in it. Conquering the land was part of that objective, and yet, in New Dawn, it's about reclaiming your home. Sure, our character might not be from Montana, but it doesn't matter because the player is. The player became engrossed in Hope County through their journey in Far Cry 5. So this idea that we're banding together with our community to take our home back hits so much harder because we're visiting locations we have a connection to and doing so with characters we have a connection to. Part of the interest for New Dawn is seeing how our favorite locations turned out, and most of the time, it's rewarding. An entire side quest centers around revisiting familiar spots and seeing what the nuclear fallout has done to them, though most times they have been turned into outposts for the highwaymen. One might notice that certain landmarks, however, are absent, like Jacob's veteran facility, and that's because while this is still Hope County, its geography has changed significantly, leading to a map that is a bit smaller, though not to much detriment. Far Cry 5's map was large enough to warrant planes, and it worked because there was a lot to see and a lot of ways to antagonize the Heralds. However, in a more linear game, it makes sense to scale things back, and aside from one location, Jacob's Prison, I never felt myself feeling as though the game suffered from a lack of landmarks. We'll be doing a lot of exploring during the first act because once rescuing Thomas Rush, he tells us that we need to upgrade Prosperity and recruit specialists to be able to defeat the highwaymen. Prosperity is a direct reflection of progression. Its success is a show of how much we can do and how powerful we are, so it makes sense that many players want to upgrade it immediately, and we do that by completing outposts. Incorporating outposts into the main questline like this is a great idea because that gameplay loop, as everyone knows, is the bread and butter of the series. Outposts provide ethanol, which can be used to upgrade different facilities in Prosperity, which grant benefits like better weapons, more health, and better vehicles. Then, individual items like cars and weapons will need to be crafted with different materials from around the map. But this system ends up being redundant, as any player picking up whatever is directly in their path will rarely be short, and if they are, it's never more than a slight detour to get what they need. We'll talk more about what that potential grind looks like, but for now, let's see how the outposts are different. Outposts are designed as well as they have ever been, though the lack of a larger scale palace like those seen in Far Cry 4 mean they aren't necessarily beating that game. The environments here almost always had something to work with, whether that be a distraction or an animal that could fight for you. And as mentioned, sometimes someone else will attack the base at the same time as you, making it even more difficult to stay incognito during the chaos. Once open combat ensues, it's the typical Far Cry fun, though you may notice the damage numbers and health bars, which are new to this game. And if you've been on the internet before, then you know that damage numbers can be a PR nightmare for any game. To get something straight, the problem isn't the damage numbers themselves. The numbers are already there, weapons already have damage values. The difference is simply that we are being shown those values, and in some ways, that can be limiting. A player might not experiment with weapons because the stats alone would have them believe it's not worth it. Based on the stats, there is one assault rifle that has the highest RPM, the most damage, and the best handling. So why would I bother using anything else? What it also does is imply a poorly incorporated gear system. And while New Dawn doesn't fall into that trap, I still think that adding these metrics and damage numbers hurts the experience, and a lot of it comes down to the screen real estate and the information provided. For one, Far Cry has never been a game that is broken by specific gun configurations, and even if it wants to be, it isn't yet. That and a bow and arrow breaks a game far harder than any build ever could, but I digress. The other reason the damage numbers are redundant is that the health bar provides the same stats. I think when we get enemies with different tiers and armor, adding a health bar, something to indicate to the player that they are doing something, is sound. But that is all we need. The health bar alone functions not just as a show of damage, but a show of efficiency. Is the health bar going down fast? Then you're good. Is it not? Perhaps try a better weapon. These damage numbers alone, especially when mostly static, don't add anything to the gameplay, and only serves to clutter the screen. I mentioned a similar sentiment in my Far Cry Primal review. Guys, the world is beautiful, so get these fucking eyesores out of here! Aside from the bloating mentioned, the UI is actually improved, such as when driving, the controls no longer clutter the screen. To go back to the outpost, however, there comes an issue where the best way to proceed is always through stealth. It yields more resources, which means faster progression, and obtaining cooler things sooner. Color me annoyed then when the only way to dispatch enemies in stealth is by purchasing a steeply priced character upgrade, or by getting good enough weapons to take down said enemies. If I could take down the tier 3 enemies, then chances are I wouldn't be searching for more ethanol, so we arrive at a weird roadblock in the progression. It's a minor concern given how easy it is to earn perk points, but it's still worth noting that this kind of railroaded progression restricts players heavily, even if similar upgrades were present in previous games. Ultimately, the Outpost's biggest strength and weakness come from the game's progression, which I keep harping on, as I do feel it's linear, but in a way that mostly comes from how we upgrade our weapons and prosperity. While certain buildings within prosperity can be upgraded, they can only go so high unless raising the level of the base as a whole. While restricting freedom, I think this wisely encourages the player to not just max out their gear instantly, and instead diversify their arsenal. Because I was encouraged to upgrade the training facility, which strengthens the guns for hire, I actually used them this time around. This strengthened the feeling of community too, something a commenter pointed out in my Far Cry 5 video. Much of Act 1 and 2 will see us recruiting these specialists who all have short missions where we do them a favor in exchange for their recruitment. Some returning characters are here like Nick Rye, Sharky, and there are some new ones too, like Celine and Bean. There's a strange dichotomy within New Dawn's story, where the returning characters from 5 feel like they come from a completely different game, and yeah, I get it, they do, but it shouldn't feel that way. Bean is a scout who sets up Wikibeania, and Celine is a psychedelic scientist that helps with medkit development, and simply comparing them to Grace showcases a complete tonal clash. Perhaps I'm being too harsh. When looking at New Dawn's world, it's clear that half of it is still scorched. Borders of the map are desolate, radiation keeps you away, and the lush bloom of Hope County prevents you from even wanting to leave. There's a constant contrast between the serious nature of the world ending and the people, like Mickey and Lou, who will just do what they want to have fun, as if, with society's collapse, the rules are gone. There's a clear theme of generations within New Dawn. Joseph and his son are at odds, Mickey and Lou were once at odds with their mother, and Carmina, now a grown woman, is having to fight alongside her parents for a world she has never known. Perhaps this divide between the old Hope County and the new is an intentional choice, one to make me feel like a new world was born after the bombs fell, and those who exited their bunkers were from a different world entirely. Still, this is a world we want to save because it's beautiful, and while the presence of pink gets criticized a lot, I think it's meant to represent an interesting contrast. For now, we can rescue Thomas Rush, who's our only hope of defeating the Highwaymen. Just after saving him and upgrading Prosperity, the Highwaymen attack, and we get an interesting encounter with Mickey and Lou, where, despite having us by the balls, they don't kill us, and I really wondered why here. They could have stopped all of this, but I figured they didn't want to because we weren't a direct threat, and it might be better for them to come back and steal resources, though the game doesn't state this. The largest problem with this scene is that there's an implication that the twins could simply do this whenever, and there isn't all that much of a reason for them not to do it. Sure, there might be a reason for them to not kill us now, but by Act 2, we've cleared out many of their outposts, something not optional considering upgrading Prosperity to level 3 is required by the endgame. I would have much preferred an assault on Prosperity and then a follow-up mission where we sneak into one of their strongholds to rescue a hostage. There we could overhear a potential reason as to why they don't want to wipe out Prosperity and still have some kind of confrontation with the twins. Otherwise, the idea that they could just launch an attack on Prosperity at any time kind of hangs over our heads. Between each act, New Dawn gives us an intermission that contextualizes the upcoming plot. For example, here we see Carmina as a child had interacted with Joseph Seed post-collapse. This is because Kim, for as much as she hates it, is being convinced that it might be worth asking Joseph for help in defeating the Highwaymen. But before we get too caught up in that, we need to level up our gear, specifically weapons. This is perhaps the largest point of contention with the gameplay, which is that for as much as numbers play a role, it simply seems that the rarity of your gear determines if you do damage at all. Purple enemies will hardly be tickled by a white weapon, and blue will only get you by with added patience. You may also notice a lack of weapon customization, and perhaps this is a hot take, but I think this is good for balance and for progression. Freedom is hardly ever a bad thing, but when it comes to balance, it can actually make seeing the best parts of the game harder. Let me explain. If I want to get a stealth bonus when clearing an outpost, and can customize guns, then within a relatively short period of time, I could put a suppressor on my pistol and never have to look back. If outposts are a puzzle, then the entire game is solved by one tube at the end of my barrel. If the first weapon with a suppressor is locked behind upgrading the weapons bench with ethanol obtained from outposts, then I am forced to make do with what I have. This means I might opt for the bow, or get my hands dirty, or even consider the loud approach. When there's so many choices in front of you, but the most optimal is closed off, it makes all other choices worth considering. Now let's consider the fact that we need stealth weapons that have functional damage too, because a suppressor means nothing without it also being able to one or at least two-shot kill. When entering the blue tier of weapons, I found myself not being able to craft the silenced weapons, which made me try other options such as the slingshot, which was more enjoyable than a bow or a silenced weapon, even if the function is similar. What the lack of weapon customization also prevents is homogenization. Let's say a weapon has significant fire rate but horrible handling to balance it out. In most games, I could put on an attachment that allows me to boost its handling, or in the case of Far Cry, I'd be using any old gun but with a silencer. Here, because we can't customize the guns, we have to play around with their flaws. Once I arrived at the top tier of weapons, I found 3 guns with different strengths and weaknesses. One that had a suppressor, but lacked in damage and fire rate, one that had good fire rate and damage, but a lot of recoil, and one that had the best damage, little recoil, but didn't have a suppressor and its magazine size was a constant problem. Because I couldn't just kit out whatever gun I chose to be perfect by all means, it meant I was spending more time considering my options. What downsides do I want to deal with? Is this gun's downside a deal breaker for me? These questions and choices become even better when we factor in the resource question. No weapon can be crafted without resources. They are pretty easy to gain except for a select few such as motherboards. Why you'd need 40 motherboards to craft a fucking pistol is beyond me, but the impact remains. And what is that impact? A force that prevents homogenization. We simply aren't allowed to optimize our builds fully until we engage with the game more. Now, a counterpoint is that engaging with the game isn't always fun, such as when hunting for resources. A bear will give titanium, so the most effective method of grinding is to head over to a location where bears roam, throw bait on the ground, and 2-tap an apex predator over and over. It's a similar issue with the previous games, where hunting is an afterthought, but I'd be lying if I said I had a solution. People who outright hate this game always have a caveat saying, hey, at least the expeditions were good. If you thought to yourself that there weren't enough outposts or environmental variety, then chances are you missed these. Expeditions are a series of side missions that take place all over post-apocalyptic America, which sees you flying into a location, looking for a package, and getting out. Once the package is picked up, your position is revealed, which means these missions follow a formula where you approach with stealth, scouting out the guards, and then slowly searching for the package. Typically, the exfiltration point you make your stand at will have some kind of turret or interactable to make the exfil more interesting, and the best part about these is that they are replayable. For outposts and expeditions, once completed, you can reset them to a higher difficulty setting that yields greater rewards. And with this reset comes new guard layouts, different alarm locations, and for the expeditions, the package is located somewhere different each time. This makes for near infinite replayability. And while sure, you might see every layout after 5 attempts, the fact that there was enough variety for me to even find out that limit speaks for itself. It's a genuine shock that expeditions didn't become a staple for the series, and furthermore, a reasonable next step for the outposts. If we can't have the fortresses of Far Cry 4, then the expeditions of New Dawn are more than good enough. After needing a power boost, we decide to seek Joseph's seed for guidance. In order to enter New Eden, we go through an ethereal backstory for Joseph, and this is perhaps one of the best written parts of this game because this segment serves a multitude of purposes. First, it's a helpful recap for players who don't fully remember the events of Far Cry 5. Second, it's a view of those events from Joseph's perspective. History is written by the victor, and even if Joseph was the bad guy, he was right, so he pens the codex. Third, we visit plenty of old points of interest to see how time and nuclear warfare has treated them, and the answer is typically unkind. Finally, we get to see the legend of Joseph. We experience something likely similar to what his followers experience, seeing Joseph as a prophet, as a man not just chosen by God, but communing as though he is equal. We end our tour by entering the bunker where Far Cry 5 ended, and we see how the time he spent with the deputy changed both them and him. Now being granted access to New Eden, we encounter Ethan, Joseph's son, and one of the weaker characters in this game. He's antagonistic, believing that while Joseph may be a prophet, he abandoned the people of New Eden and left him in charge, making him an heir to the throne. He asks that we travel north to find proof of Joseph's death, and our journey north is a moment of poor pacing in my opinion, because it asks us to leave our boat far too often, and we are lighting fires in a similar way to the previous mission. Regardless, rolling through the fog, finally reaching Joseph's sanctuary, we see what can only be described as a new character. He's older, frail, and tired. This is the body of a man who has given his every breath to God, and in spite of the horrors, we can't help but believe he truly is communing with the one above. At the top of Joseph's sanctuary is a pink-petaled apple tree. Next to it are bliss containers that have spilled into the water supply. This explains the bloom we've seen across Hope County. The land is in bliss, growing pink where there was once white. It's possible this is symbolic of God or Joseph's influence on the land. The purest form of the color pink is found at Joseph's sanctuary, and as if his spirit flows downstream, the rest of Hope County is bathed in that color. We can interpret this in a few ways. Maybe this is reflective of Joseph's influence on the land, his gospel spreading over the seared grounds by virtue of being the only thing left, or maybe it just looks cool, and New Dawn doesn't need more of an excuse. But I don't buy it. Joseph's presence here feels too intentional to be for the sake of aura, and feels too intentional to be confined to just this game. Joseph in Far Cry 5 is the new evil. Sure, his malice is questionable given circumstances, like other villains before him, but we never question if he must be stopped. New Dawn presents Joseph as the good guy, our salvation, our solution. When viewing Joseph through our generational lens between the old world and the new world, perhaps this is a commentary on how change is perceived. When Far Cry 5 released, many noted that they hated it. It changed too much, and I agreed. But now, in retrospect, after Far Cry 6, I found myself appreciating the change more and more because it was no longer new. That's not to say everyone's thought process was like this, but it's something I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Joseph is kind to us, shows us his tree, and is about to pick an apple from it, but at the last moment, grabs a different one. This first apple he intended to grab is the one that Ethan would later pick, and we will return to this detail later. Upon eating the apple, Joseph tells us that we will be granted the power necessary to defeat the Highwaymen, only if our soul is clean. An interesting boss fight against a bear that goes on for a tad too long is a way of fighting the sin within us, and we emerge with the gift of New Eden. Joseph explains that we are what God spoke to Joseph about, and with our arrival, he is prepared to go back to New Eden and intends on assisting us. Ethan throws a tantrum about this, leading us to seeing him as an antagonist not because he is against Joseph, but because he is an entitled child. Perhaps an intelligent way of communicating that he is not fit to lead, or perhaps a fucking annoyance, who knows. With New Eden explicitly helping, and with a myriad of new abilities, we're able to continue building prosperity and taking the land back, but not without first getting a final gift from Joseph, his judge. It's clear that the judge is the deputy from Far Cry 5. I love that their gender is ambiguous both in design and dialogue, so that both versions of the deputy are still canon. Not only are they kinda fun in combat when they aren't getting one-tapped, but the lore surrounding them is exceptionally interesting. We can find notes in Joseph's bunker that show that, either through seeing proof of God's influence on Joseph or through torture and brainwashing, the deputy now fully believes in him, and dons an owl mask as a way of shedding their former identity. Within the Bible, owls are a symbol of unclean desolation within the Old Testament. I believe the reason the judge wears an owl mask is because they now roam the desolate wasteland they helped create, and through their sins are inherently unclean. A symbol of the ruins of the project at Eden's Gate and their conversion to a symbol of New Eden. I wish the judge played a larger role here, but I suppose they can't because their story is finished. The gifts of New Eden are an interesting way of incorporating the supernatural into gameplay. Whereas previous games relied on drug trips, New Dawn instead gives us genuine powers, and it has significant effects on both the gameplay and narrative. To start first with the gameplay, the biggest problem I have with Eden's Gift is that it doesn't change much. Often I'd find myself forgetting about the double jump, having a piss-filtered vignette over my takedowns was more of a pain than anything, and the rage mode had so little impact that I hadn't used it once during the story, and had to go back to get footage of it. The narrative implications are much harder to ignore because it is the strongest case for God's existence within the Far Cry world. Part of what made Joseph such an interesting character in Far Cry 5 was that we ultimately didn't know if God was real, because if he is, then the odds of Joseph being extremely lucky and or extremely in tune are diminished. We can ignore this for now, because these implications will become more important later on. Once prosperity is built up even more, we get word that Thomas Rush has not returned from a scouting operation, and moments later, the twins goad us to a fertilizer plant to rescue him. This is their way of sending a message. When we arrive, citizens of Prosperity are strapped to bombs, and when we clear them all out, the twins tell us to enter a room, but leave our guns at the door. Allow me to nitpick here, but I really dislike this idea that we just do as we're told. What's stopping us from sneaking a pistol in? Why would the twins just trust us to do what they say? Why not instead have us ambushed when we walk in, tied up and stripped of our weapons that way? A small issue for me, but it at least precedes a great scene from the game. Up to this point, the twins haven't been off to a great start. Their rants about being problem solvers never hit as hard as previous speeches about insanity or God's will, and truly, their biggest issue is comparison. Mickey and Lou are fine villains, but next to Joseph, Pagan, and Voss, not even close. In this scene, however, we get to see their dynamic on display. Mickey is the more level-headed of the twins, enjoying the chaos but maintaining control, whereas Lou has far less care for thinking ahead. The best instance of this is when we break free from our cuffs. When we begin to get the upper hand, Mickey doesn't wait, doesn't give a speech, she just shoots us. No chances were taken, and I love that this was a subversion of my expectations. It's not uncommon for villains to gloat long enough to be defeated, or to have a flimsy excuse to keep you alive. Mickey and Lou kill you, and then check the body. Sure, they didn't know you survived, but blasting you with a double barrel to the chest, sending you out a 3-story building, and then kicking your body is about as sure as you can get. If all the scenes with the twins were like this, then I'd wager Mickey and Lou would have been much more appreciated by audiences. I think they would also be appreciated if we learned more about them, and not from the intermission cutscenes. These cutscenes showcase Mickey and Lou's tragic backstory of leaving their mother to supposedly ride the open road with their father, and that's it. We get little else from them. And sure, Far Cry villains have often coasted off of low screen time and high screen presence, but without the screen presence to match other characters in the games, we needed something else to make them compelling. As far as I was concerned, the only thing I liked was their concept and character designs. Yeah, the idea is nice, but like cannibalizing an imaginary friend, there's nothing to chew on. That's a horrible fucking joke, bro. The death of Thomas Rush leaves us as the only hope for prosperity. New Dawn attempts to follow the trend of previous Far Cry games, notably 3 and 4, where the player character starts in a menial role, but as the story goes on, becomes a force worthy of the protagonist label. As far as the captain is concerned, Rush is the main character. He's the guy with the plan, the resources, and the experience. Our powers bestowed upon us by God, and now with a Rush-size hole in prosperity, leads us to be thrust into the role of the hero, the protagonist. I think this lacks impact here, however, because we are the only ones to get anything done. For as much as Rush is postured as the guy who gets things done, he mostly just gives us orders. We're the only ones to do the dirty work, and the one time he leaves to scout something on his own, he's captured instantly and needs us to come save him, or at least try to save him. Oops. Act 3 is where the endgame for New Dawn begins. I say that because the primary grind here is going to be in gearing up for the end of the game, and beyond the end of the game is the same loop that preceded it. We get to infiltrate the twins' operation more than once, the first time interesting, the second time not. A combat arena is a lot of fun, because the melee combat itself is fun, with lunging attacks and heavy impact to sell the weight of each swing. Environmental hazards spice things up too, and yet when we infiltrate the derby, I found the opposite effect. Vehicles are unwieldy in first person, especially when controlling the car and camera at the same time. It always felt as though I was outnumbered, and worse, it always felt more effective to just stand around waiting for the vehicles to loop back to me like I was playing a shooting gallery. Coupled with the vehicles not punishing that playstyle by attempting to run the player over, and we have a derby that feels like all but a derby. We at least end with one of our final interactions with the twins, though it's presented as if it's one of the first times, given certain cliches like the characters laughing maniacally before killing one of their own. Ethan walks in and tells the twins that he'll give them the power of New Eden so long as they kill Joseph, committing the deadliest sin of greed. We get a gun, wipe out the highwaymen, and then give chase to Mickey and Lou, who are stationed at New Eden, ready for a final confrontation. Perhaps this is a hot take, but this might be the weakest boss fight in the entire series, because they function like normal enemies with a large health bar, and they barely put up a fight. I was casually completing side quests throughout my playthrough, but was by no means grinding, and yet I was able to take both down by just standing still and unloading bullets into them. Luckily, it's not the final fight, as we still have to chase Ethan, but not before we get the final scene with Mickey and Lou. Their death scene is one of my favorites in the series, simply because Mickey realizes that she got way over her head, and while I certainly don't think her regret entitles her to life, if you do let her live, she will leave a note saying that she's leaving the highwaymen behind to find her mother and follow the straight and narrow. My biggest gripe with this scene is that it positions the player with the choice to walk away, and the assumption is that you walk backwards, towards the objective at Joseph's sanctuary. But if doing this, you're in for a very long journey. I think the intended path is to take the same boat you did when heading to the sanctuary the first time. But most players, including other YouTubers that played the game, assumed you were supposed to head in the opposite direction. I think placing a vehicle here would solve this issue, and I'm surprised playtesting never caught this, because I've yet to encounter someone who didn't end up walking a majority of the way to Joseph's sanctuary. When arriving at the tree, Ethan takes the apple, the same that Joseph almost gave to us, and he turns into a beast in agony. I want you to recall that this was the initial apple that Joseph was going to give us, but, seemingly at the last minute, decided on giving us a different one. This, again, calls into question if the reason that Ethan turned into this monster was because of his soul, or because of the apple itself. It's assumed that the tree was infected with bliss, meaning its fruits were likely poisonous. Maybe there was some kind of identifying feature of the apple that Joseph gave us, making him think that it was going to be safe, but then again, maybe Joseph knew that the bear would be the end of anyone who consumes the apple without a clean soul. That could be why there's a bear-like mural on the dam. We could question how Joseph knows knows this then? Could it be because of others who have made it north, or could it be because he has truly seen visions of what will happen? Maybe it is because he himself took a fruit. More and more evidence suggests that Joseph truly is a supernatural force in this game, and I think the fruit seals this assumption. Our final fight against Ethan is once again disappointing, but at least there are some actual attacks for us to dodge here, and weak points that we can shoot for more damage. It again doesn't last very long, but it ends with Joseph joining us and mourning his son's death. We place Ethan at the base of the tree, and the tree is set ablaze. Joseph realizes that he did not understand God's plan, and that he was never the chosen one, but we are. He asks that we release him, even if we choose not to. He begs. At this point, asking God, not us. His voice becomes distorted, as if his soul is warping with guilt.
That's where the audio is from.
Joseph in this game is the good guy, and the fact that his final act is one of regret and sorrow made me
I
feel
always find it
sympathetic
funny
to him.
how
Joseph, for all the
whenever
evil
I'm
he
watching
committed,
TikTok
truly thought
videos
he
and
was
all
doing the
stuff,
work of God,
there's
and
this
now
audio,
realizes that he
and then
betrayed his God.
months,
And
if
God's
not a year
protection of
later,
Joseph wasn't because he was right,
I
but because
just
he
find
knew
out
more
where their
time to learn
audio
the truth.
originally
If sparing
came
Joseph,
from, like,
he
oh,
disappears,
it came
and we
from
get
this.
no indication of where he went or what he will do. The burning of the pink-petaled tree is
It's always
symbolic of
funny
God's wrath,
finding
or
out the
perhaps
source.
the end of God's influence. Maybe this means that the plan for the rest of the world is undecided. After finishing the campaign, you get the message that the world is yours. Maybe this is the voice, God, saying that you decide the future. But it seems it wouldn't matter. Far Cry 6 seems to follow in the timeline where the bombs never dropped. Perhaps because the sheriff chose to initially walk away. Ultimately, Far Cry New Dawn is a game I think undeserving of its reputation. Many people believe that it has weak protagonists, which fair, but also that it has bad gameplay and a disappointing world, and I just don't see it that way. What I think is especially interesting is how, unlike many Ubisoft games, its reception seems to have gotten worse over the last few years. I don't typically do this, but I want to look at a specific YouTuber's video on this game to see how this game's reception has changed and why. KevDoIt, a YouTuber I both like and have previously defended during the minor controversy surrounding his sponsored Mind's Eye video, has released 2 videos on New Dawn. The first video has comments that are generally kind, while understanding the flaws. 4 years later, his latest video on the game, the comments section is noticeably harsher. Now, this could be due to a litany of reasons. It could be the title, which on the second time around implies negativity, which would seldom attract people who like the game. It could be Ubisoft's reputational changes. Since 2020, they have released more stinkers than bangers, and even their best release since then, Assassin's Creed Shadows, was mired with controversy. It could be the content of the video, as KevDoIt in his second video chose not to upgrade his weapons, and then complained about damage sponges, something others complained about too. Truly, I don't think I'll ever understand why this happens. We have games like this that introduce progression, and I swear, just the presence of a damage number flips some kind of switch where even traditional means of progression, like buying better weapons, is just ignored. The reason it puzzles me so much is because on paper, this progression is good design. It encourages the player to experiment, to try new things, engage with different mechanics, and a lot of that is going to occur naturally as you play, so it's not a grind. Yet, despite this, players hate it to the point where they refuse to engage with it. I can point to all the theoretical game design rules as to why I think this kind of progression system is good, but if it always results in player dissatisfaction, then I really don't know. I think ultimately what Far Cry New Dawn struggles with the most is a coherent journey. In many ways, building up prosperity, defeating the twins, and interacting with Joseph feel like 3 different plot lines that rarely intersect, and yet all happen at the same time. Couple this with gameplay that, while good, doesn't do enough to make me feel as though it interacts with the narrative and is more than constant outposts, and we have one of the worst rated games in the series. It's a shame too that this game underperformed, because since the launch of Far Cry 6, we haven't seen another spin-off, though that could be due to the excessive length and size of Far Cry 6. What New Dawn shows us, however, is a different timeline for Far Cry. The timeline where the gameplay is held too far above story, where progression is neglected because some numbers jump out of an enemy when they're hit, and where the villains are simply villains. And I think that might be its biggest flaw. Part of what makes the Far Cry series so unique and capable of telling good stories is that there is no traditional hero or villain. There are protagonists, there are antagonists, but morality is always gray. Sometimes we are forced to confront our actions. If the only way to survive a bad person is to be worse, is it right to survive? Is it just? Sometimes we face a bleak reality that maybe the issue isn't the person in power, but the power itself. We become part of a cycle, a revolving door of leadership, one usurpation after another. Sometimes we're told to question what freedom is, under divinity, under a script, and under the bounds of the media we consume. But what does New Dawn tell us? What question does it pose to the player? I think that more than its smaller price tag or shorter runtime is what makes this game a spin-off. New Dawn does not ask questions, it simply provides answers, like the spin-offs before it. Primal answered what Far Cry would be like in a prehistoric world, and New Dawn answers what it would be like after that world ended. You could not boil the mainline games down to this. Far Cry 5 is so much more than a Far Cry in America, just as Far Cry 3 is more than Far Cry on a Caribbean island. Our final message, that the world is ours, is a narrative shrug. Obviously, with Primal, the instinct was that the future of the world would be the same as our world. With New Dawn, though, the future isn't certain, or even discernible. So no, New Dawn is not deserving of its reputation, because for everything it lacks, interesting villains, something to prompt player reflection, and a slew of good boss fights, it more than makes up for in having the best gameplay of the series thus far. Progression is even tighter than it was in Far Cry 5. Its world is a beautiful remix of an already gorgeous world. Its expeditions advance the outpost formula that has been untouched for years. The general gameplay loop makes this game the most suitable for co-op. And finally, it took the character of Joseph Seed and flipped his role in this world, simply by changing perspectives. It showed us a better view of how the cult saw him, not as a murderous madman, but as someone who does whatever God asks, even if it means getting his hands dirty. If you haven't played New Dawn yet, then I highly recommend it, especially given how cheap it typically is. It's not going to give you the full Far Cry experience, but it's still going to be good, and in the things it chooses not to do, it'll make you appreciate what the mainline games dare to. Games like this that are given the spin-off title, while being stunted through said spin-off label, some of the systems could have been better with a higher budget, including its story, in the same breath, because it's a spin-off, it gets to try new things. Ubisoft has always, even if it turns out to be no more than okay, tries new things with their spin-offs. Blood Dragon was a massive aesthetic risk, Primal stripped back its gameplay as a way of confidently revealing how solid the foundations are, and New Dawn showed us where the future of the series mechanically will go. Through this lens, Far Cry 6's decision to stick to a timeline where New Dawn doesn't exist is as much of an avoidance of the world's fate as it is an acknowledgement of the game's reception. However, after playing Far Cry 6, with the hindsight of what the new timeline offers, I'd say the grass is greener in Hope County. And thank you once again, Monly, for sponsoring this video.
Yo, what's up? Hello. Bro, like, every time I log in, I have more and more fucking lag. What the fuck? I'm trying to fix it, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing it. I'm gonna use like cook. I ain't gonna lie, my secret. Go. Kinda fucking wild. Kinda fucking wild. Hold on. My music is kinda loud though. Like that. Like, I have no FPS in this bitch, bro. Like, bro, I'm trying to say the ulti, bro. Dog. Why am I so laggy, dude? Wasn't like that before. Oh my god, it's just a fucking slideshow to that. I might have to restart. Bro, let me do that. Fuck that. Not doing that. Fuck. What the hell is this shit? Bruh. I don't know what is like this. That's the problem.
We. Dude, this is so silly.
A location, often tropical, learning of said location's local politics, and toppling whatever the oppressive force is there, often with a hint of the supernatural, whether by way of a tatau or a vague curse upon the land that causes its inhabitants to change. This change in the player character, often used as a means of critiquing the player, is postured as a regression. We enter a state where we kill and loot like uncivilized beasts, using the world and the societies around it like a playground. After the success of Far Cry 3, many were concerned that Ubisoft would fall into a formula, and those concerns were heightened when Far Cry 4's biggest criticism was that it was too similar to its critically acclaimed predecessor. Far Cry Primal is Ubisoft's answer, and an answer that says, fine, we'll do something different. Is that answer a good one though? Well, if there's one thing I've been told, it's that Far Cry Primal is underrated. Let's first discuss the ultimate subjectivity of that statement, because what does it even mean? If a game sold well and reviewed well, but someone thinks it should have been given even better treatment, then by all means, it's underrated to them. So I can't answer if I think it's underrated, and so instead, I want to focus on looking at why people feel the way they do about Primal. I'll still try to answer the underrated and overrated question, but my goal here is to see what Primal does right, wrong, if I feel it deserved its sales and review scores, and how it stacks up against the rest of the series. As the name might imply, Primal takes place during, in layman's terms, caveman Ooga Booga times, more specifically the later Stone Ages. Primal was praised heavily for being historically accurate, which if you've played any of the Assassin's Creed games, then you'll know that this isn't a surprise, but it's impressive regardless, and showcases a common theme with Ubisoft's older and even current releases, which is their worlds. Primal presents a world that may as well be fantasy with how gorgeous it looks, making me nearly yearn for the nature-led past. But that doesn't mean we want our mechanics to regress too. Primal, rather appropriately I guess, presents Far Cry at its most bare bones, which leads to some great moments and does open the door for innovation regarding those baseline systems, but no revolutionary changes make it through that door, instead only peeking their head inside to check the place out. Where Primal shines most is in retrospect, as it's one of the last major prehistoric video games we received in the last decade. During the 90s, we saw plenty of caveman-centric games, but that gimmick has since subsided, meaning Primal is still to this day undeniably unique, and occupies a niche that is still relatively untapped. But why is that? I'll try to answer that, but more importantly, I want to see why Far Cry Primal has such a die-hard fanbase, and why the game still holds up all these years later, and I'll spoil it now, it's not necessarily because of its setting being a commodity. Far Cry Primal has some great ideas, but it does also have flaws, and while it looks exactly like any other Far Cry game, it is entirely different for not the best reasons. Be prepared for spoilers, though I'm sure you can imagine the story is a lot of unga bunga and mammoth riding, because this is Far Cry Primal, 12,000 years later. Oros is a new land to our main character Takar, as he searches for his fellow Wenja people, but it may not be entirely new to the player. Some noted about a week after the game launched that it shared similarities with Far Cry 4's Kyrat, specifically with rivers and general topography. This is a little ironic given that the idea for Primal originated after Far Cry 3, but just wasn't executed until after Far Cry 4. When questioned about the map, Ubisoft was by no means shy, and while on the surface this appears like a lazy repurposing, I think it's actually an idea that works in favor of the game and its historical themes. To immediately defend the use of the map, I think it's absolutely fine as long as it doesn't feel reused. And to me, I felt that not only was it entirely separate from Kyrat, but it also looked better at almost every angle. Elden Ring, a game praised for its environments, reused assets, hell, even bosses all throughout the game. Murkwater Cave's boss arena is the exact same as the boss arena in the Sage's Cave. Does it matter? No. Because chances are, you never noticed. If it seems like I'm making excuses for the game, then let's go further and check out the minimap, which is constantly showing roads where there are none, and generally being inaccurate and unhelpful. This made me see the map in a different light, as if, perhaps in this prehistoric age, maps weren't very good and thus had plenty of inaccuracies, or this map is representative of what the land will eventually become, as if, eventually, roads will be built there. The problem with this interpretation is that this land is not Kyrat. Kyrat is somewhere near the Himalayas, whereas Oros is meant to be somewhere in Central Europe. meaning this connection likely wasn't intentional and that, yeah, I guess I am looking at a shitty minimap and gleaning that the devs were geniuses. Kidding aside, the minimap was a constant frustration because it really doesn't show that much aside from where plants and enemies are, which is valuable, but not at all necessary. Oros is a land full of eye candy, so get this fucking eyesore out of the way. A compass might have been better suited, or better yet, just let us figure it out. This isn't the end of the UI issues, and while I think it's not a big deal, what is are the markers that appear when you get close to a mission. Remember, this world is beautiful, and we'll talk more about it soon, but it would be a hell of a lot easier to appreciate it if I could see it. Instead, whenever close to an objective, I have to stare at a massive JPEG of some caveman's compressed-ass face card. Minor criticism? Yes, but this game made me realize how much UI matters in games. I know I'm a tad late to the party, but especially when a game can look as good as this, man, let me see it! Oros reminded me a lot of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, not in the sense that it was bloated, but in the way that it felt so otherworldly. There are no sci-fi elements here, at least not entirely, but the game does take some creative liberties when it comes to the world to make it more picturesque. Yeah, maybe the god rays are a little much if we're looking purely at realism, but if a view like this isn't realistic, then I don't want realism. The views from practically every outpost are pure eye candy, and the night sky illuminated by stars and nebula-like dust sells the beauty even more, and romanticizes the past. In our modern times, stars aren't always visible. First world problems, I know, but in Vancouver, with so much light pollution, we don't see the stars often. Now, I'm not saying I want to go back to the caveman times, okay? I consider myself accustomed to not sleeping in the dirt and wiping my ass with tree leaves, but it did make me think, wow, the past must have been beautiful. This extends to the fauna too, as animals
Always has
control
been.
most of the land,
Sometimes.
not showing hostility all the time, but dictating how we move and when
No,
we
I'm
move.
just
Wolves
watching
hunt
the
in
video.
packs, offering a challenge for the early game,
Where
but will
he's
also hunt
basically
other animals.
saying,
So like any good
"The
escape,
past must have
running
been
into an animal
beautiful."
that's slower than you will offer
It was,
room to breathe as it
sometimes.
will shift their attention. As the old saying goes, you don't have to be the fastest, just not the slowest. Cutscenes in this game share the beauty of the open world, and actually even more so. The lighting when inside huts was genuinely jaw-dropping, and the faces here absolutely cleared the modern Ubisoft releases. It's incredible to me how great their facial animation and structure was. Like, what happened, guys? Hell, these faces are often so expressive that they border on showing off. Each character has large eyes, no doubt an excuse to show off how good they look. And again, the expressiveness of their faces and the way they get so close to you makes it clear that Ubisoft knows these faces look killer too. When comparing this to other Far Cry games, the first thing that comes to mind is the themes. When looking at Far Cry 2, 3, and 4, there was a clear theme of entering a relatively foreign land, being out of your depth, and having to conquer that land. Each land, respectively, had someone who represented both the political themes of the location and story, while our journey represented the strength required to conquer that location and whoever sat on its throne. Much of this was in service of critiquing the player. If you want to know more about that, I expand upon it in my videos on those games, but my concern going into Primal was not if there would still be a land for us to conquer. In fact, in that regard, the game is as on the nose as ever. But the concern was, what critiques will the game levy against us? Does it even need to? Primal is, given the lack of a number in the title, a spin-off, so maybe I shouldn't be expecting the game to give us that critique. And with that in mind, let's look at the journey of conquering Oros. Oros sees us fighting some human adversaries, but who sits on the throne of Oros is not the people, but the wildlife. As mentioned with the wolves, the animals dictate how you move, when you move, and so much more. Torches will scare away some animals, so keeping one handy will aid in keeping you safe. But that light source will attract more animals, especially at night, and it makes stealth near impossible. During the daytime, you have more safety as animals are less aggressive, and visibility is much better. Each animal acts as its own roadblock. If you hear a leopard, then you need to analyze your environment for high ground, because it's too fast and too lethal to tackle head on. Herds of mammoths are often friendly, just as long as you don't get too close, and traversing the world always had intention, even more so than previous entries, and led to memorable moments. I had one where a pack of wolves was surrounding me, and my solution was to jump on a log and poke them with a spear. It was a great memory. Your upgrades, village, and resources are all tied to crafting, much more so than the previous games, making Primal a game where you have the strongest connection to the land. I had mentioned in my previous videos I often ignored the hunting and gathering in Far Cry for two major reasons. reasons. The first, hunting was rather boring, and even the scariest creatures got turned into Swiss cheese in just a few seconds. The second, I only ever did it as a means to an end, i.e. to get an upgrade. Bullets could be purchased, syringes could be found, and weren't needed. And with the ability to pick up enemy weapons, I never needed to prepare much for an encounter. Primal forces the player to rely on hunting and gathering as a means of progression still, but also as a means of survival. Every weapon has durability, meaning you'll constantly be needing to craft new weapons, and everything you do in the game costs some kind of resource. They almost go in an interesting direction with this in regards to healing, but seem a little too scared to change up the formula. Healing is now primarily done by consuming animal fat, obtained primarily through hunting animals. This encourages players to focus on hunting as they go, which not only fulfills the caveman fantasy, but also keeps the game more balanced. I've mentioned before that Far Cry games can be quite easy, and Primal is actually one of the more difficult games, and this is one of the reasons why. When you can't continually pop your arm back into place to heal, you become much more in touch with the land and thus further the caveman fantasy while also furthering your personal journey of conquering said land by way of better understanding the creatures that call it home. However, they still include something called a primitive heal, which is the familiar healing from the other games. I don't think this is a massive blow to balance, especially when consuming animal fat will always replenish more health than primitive healing, and will do so in less time, but more encouragement would have been nice because unlike other Far Cry games, preparation is highlighted much more. Some of the endgame challenges will require genuine thought, and cannot be brute forced entirely. However, upgrading your weapons does eventually lead you to slaughtering the wildlife without thinking about it. Ironically, the stronger you get, the less you engage with the mechanics. Early on, strategy is needed to take down mammoths, and even a dole could be a pain, but by the end, they'll be getting brutally bonked with whatever club you have. Leopards are now a minor inconvenience when they were once a death sentence. I don't think this is a problem necessarily, because it only happened once I had completed nearly all side content, and if this kind of power is a reward for conquering the game's challenges, that is probably fine, but the humor of it can't be forgotten. Speaking of humor, nature in this game can be really funny. Sometimes enemies can be blown away by the impact of a spear, and sometimes I would see an eagle pick up a small animal only to drop them to their death. Brutal, but absolutely hilarious when contrasted with how serious the game's beauty is. But after all of this beauty, all of this nature, at the end of the day, this is still a Far Cry game, and you'd be damned if you thought Ubisoft would let you forget it. Primal, as you might imagine, feels familiar in a lot of ways, and it's not just the reused animations or similar engine, but it's that a lot of what you did over 12,000 years ago is the exact same as it is in the present. An outpost in Far Cry 3 saw you approaching an area, scoping it out, planning a strategy to try and sweep the base without being spotted or raising any alarms. The problem by now is that I just accurately described the outpost in Far Cry 4 and Primal 2. In fairness, this might not be a problem as much as it is a trend in the series, so for the sake of charitability, let's look at the larger mechanics that make these outposts different. The first being that they aren't all outposts. Bonfires around the map are like diet outposts, consisting of fewer enemies, and I found these were much better for keeping up the pace when pursuing the campaign, as it wouldn't ever take more than a minute to make a pit stop, and you'd have the fast travel point too. So in that case, these were great. The larger outposts are standard fare, so I won't explain them again. Instead, we can see that there are some changes notably in stealth. Stealth in Primal is encouraged more because enemies can more easily overwhelm you. When most of your tools for combat are melee based, spacing is much harder, and brute enemies turn into entire mini-bosses, mostly. One of the ways stealth is encouraged in their case is that you can take them down with an upgrade in stealth. However, it's also important to consider the alarms, now horns that signal other people to join the fight. And there are enemies with horns on them, which created a much more interesting order of operations when tackling outposts. You now have to carefully consider who you can take out first, and the harder outposts make this even more complicated because enemies start wearing arrow-proof helmets, meaning you need to be in melee distance. This made stealth challenging, and of course not completely imbalanced by a silent sniper. Now, granted, an issue that crops up with this system is that now the stealth inconsistencies are laid bare, with abilities like chain takedowns being less desirable when it feels like half the time it doesn't work, or when you can be damaged and detected during said takedown. There's also the issue of one person spotting you and miraculously, instantly alerting the entire base, but I digress because stealth is still generally fun, and just as much as it is to go in spears blazing. A lot of where this fun comes from is the new beast taming system, which became a bit of a staple in the series going forward, with the companions making a return in every game going forward, and with the Eagle scouting mechanic making its way into the Assassin's Creed games. Let's start with said scout, which is just fine. I think the owl controls are a little wonky, and when it came to actually surveying an area, It often was so high up that I struggled to see the enemies any better than if I just climbed the closest cliff and scouted the area myself. Scouting is made easier thanks to Hunter Vision, which is an ironic name given that the Eagle Vision probably would have fit here just fine. It highlights animal tracks, loot, enemies, nothing you haven't already seen. And fortunately, because enemies were easy to spot against the environment, especially the Azila, whose signature blue color scheme contrasts the green and orange landscapes, I wasn't feeling conditioned to spend the whole game in the desaturated lens, avoiding criticism some have levied against other games with systems like these. Alongside your owl, you can also have a companion join you, which can be tamed. Taming animals is easy, just throw some bait down, give them a good chin scratch, and voila, they'll die for you. But the fun comes from how effective they are. A bear will tear enemies to shreds, and if they get hungry, such as when losing health, they'll devour the person they just killed. The beasts reinforce the brutality of the era, and reinforce another caveman fantasy, which is storming into a fort, riding a bear, throwing spears at people. It's something you could never get from any other game. Animals can be ridden, and I like the way they function as vehicles. A mammoth is like a slow-moving tank, a bear is a good mix of power and speed, and the saber-tooth might as well be a Ferrari with how quickly it hustles through the woods. Different animals will offer buffs too, like marking nearby loot or objectives, which made tactically swapping between companions something worthwhile. In almost all Far Cry games, the quiet approach is what I take, but in Primal, I actually loved going in loud, and I think it's worth praising a game that can elicit that kind of change in me. I mentioned a lack of ranged weapons, which is true as you only have a bow and a slingshot, but I like that every melee weapon could be thrown too. It allowed me to make on-the-fly decisions while also fulfilling again this idea that during those times, you did what you could, and if someone was out of range and you had a club, fuck it, toss it at them. But there is a slight issue with some of these admittedly fun features, and it's that, unfortunately, the things you do here are too familiar. Outposts are mostly the same fare, and it's why I, anecdotally, put the game down when I first played it a few years ago. I mentioned in other videos I didn't like Primal very much, and it's because I got bored after the first 4 hours. And that was because I immediately abandoned the main questline and farmed the outposts, like I had done in every game prior. But I now see that doing the outposts first is the best way to make the game an utter slog. Approaching these forts without all the tools at your disposal forces them to fall into a repetitive bore that is exacerbated by the fact that these outposts are already no different from previous games. I can now confidently say that I kinda liked Primal after giving it another chance, but I wish the side content here was better, because it has so much potential and it often isn't entirely capitalized on. We can start with the exception to this, which are the beast hunts. Throughout Oros, there are 4 legendary beasts you can hunt down. And these are all intended for the endgame, though I did them early through a little known method called bashing my head against the wall for 3 hours, an appropriately primitive approach. These are all excellent, not just for the lore surrounding them, but the clear effort that goes into presenting these beasts as a threat. It follows a reasonable formula of hearing a rumor of the beast, arriving at their last known location, and seeing the absolute destruction they have caused to the surrounding structures and people. After following a blood trail, you'll find the animal in an enclosed arena, and be given the opportunity to take them down yourself. These hunts often have other people trying to take them down too, resulting in us seeing firsthand how lethal these animals are. And of course, we also see it happen to us as a mammoth shoves its horns so far up my ass that I'm tasting ivory. These hunts were a ton of fun, and aided by the inclusion of placing traps and the different challenges each animal provided kept things varied. I'll never forget the first time I thought I could cheese the cave bear by jumping in water, only to see him menacingly swimming towards me. They even have a neat system where if you fail the hunt, then the damage you've done to the animal carries over, which is especially helpful for the larger creatures like the mammoth, which will take a lot of damage before it can be executed. The mammoth is the only animal you outright kill, and I felt a little uncomfortable with it if I'm being honest. Primal is a rare instance where, through the sheer slowness of the kill, I felt guilty, as if this mammoth was minding its own business and then I entered its land and slaughtered him, the same as our antagonist had done to other people throughout the series. But it also made me reflect on the brutality of the life cycle. This is just how it is in the wilds. You hunt to survive until someone hunts you, and it's not pretty. Either way, it was an excellent portion of the game. Unlike the mammoth, our other prey can be tamed once their health is low enough. These legendary beasts are absolute powerhouses, especially the cave bear. The thing is just a tank. I tried not to use them too much, but it's hard not to because balance be damned, it is so much fun. The only hunt I wasn't a huge fan of was the 3 blood wolves, which we had to hunt individually. The first was a pain because it kept running away, causing tedium. The second and third were a pain because they hunt in packs, and there are a ton of wolves surrounding them. This made setting traps near pointless, because one of their lackeys would trigger them, causing me to essentially waste my resources on enemies that seemed to infinitely spawn. Aside from that, these were good, but it's all we get. Aside from these hunts, there are dynamic world events where we get to help the Wenja around Oros, but they never amounted to more than a basic excuse for combat, which is fine, and not unlike a lot of the Far Cry side content so far, but still disappointing, especially when it comes to excuses for combat and stealth, because the over 30 outposts and bonfires offer more than enough. More often, however, the main quests feel like side quests. In order to achieve the game's ending, you'll need to recruit and complete missions for different members of the Wenja tribe, but so many of them amount to fetch quests or any other basic excuse to go somewhere and fight other people or animals. When these are contrasted against the quests that see you on spiritual journeys, raiding entire villages, and engaging in some pretty okay boss fights, it all feels like the game is padding a little bit. Couple this with the ending itself being outright lame, and we get a gameplay loop full of ups and downs, and over-reliant on its core mechanics, which are just barely good enough to carry the game. Ultimately, I did enjoy Primal's gameplay even when I was cleaning up some of the more menial tasks that were simply gathering materials, because the more you're forced into this dynamic open world, the more you can encounter dynamic events that will undoubtedly amuse you more than the task at hand. Clearing an outpost isn't a surprise, but seeing two people getting it on while scouting the place definitely did surprise me. A damn shame I had to introduce the most effective means of birth control, but there's fun in seeing something as unique as that. For the sake of clarity, however, there is still definitely a handful of great missions, both side and primary, that are worth mentioning. For example, any of the shaman missions are a ton of fun because they feel like an acknowledgement of the success of the previous drug trip missions in Far Cry 3 and 4. The visuals of these are a clear cut above the rest and are surprisingly abundant compared to the typical rations we got in the other games. If we want to look at some great side missions, then we could look at Urki the Thinker, who is this game's Herc. And while I didn't like Herc in the other games, man is Urki funny as hell. There's something so golden about delivering this prehistoric language with a perfect Southern American accent, and mixing this with the slapstick comedy Urki finds himself in, and we got some of the most fun missions in the game. In one mission, he wants to ward off animals from his cave, and to do so, he believes he needs a new stink. So this guy rubs literal shit all over his body, and still gets mauled by a bear. The best part is, no matter how hard Urki is knocked down, he just can't seem to die. Whether it's taking a spear to the face or failing a leap of faith, no matter what, he keeps groaning in pain, and in one case, I wondered what would happen if I threw him in a nearby pond, and in a hilarious turn of events, his groans were muffled due to him being under the water. What a hysterical detail to add. Urki is just one of the companions you can recruit to your village. He's what the game calls a specialist, someone who can, in exchange for a spot in the village, teach Takar new abilities and techniques. In order to receive their benefits, you need to build them a home, and this is the primary function of the base building mechanics, which I generally liked. It never took much time to get materials to upgrade the village. Often I got them while I was doing other things, and the game does conveniently notify you if you have enough materials for an upgrade, meaning I didn't have to keep track of what was needed. I do think, depending on what quests you do, you can accidentally backlog a lot of the base building for later, but I'm fine to consider that a me problem. Maybe this is a result of my monkey brain liking when numbers go big, but I wish Ubisoft games had more base building mechanics like we saw here in Far Cry 4, Assassin's Creed 2, and even most recently in Shadows. I like having a place to decorate, and especially for a first-person game where cosmetics are limited to gloves and weapons, it's a good means for players to express themselves. Ultimately, despite the world being technically more barren, it remains, like most Ubisoft games, the highlight of your time. The visuals are insane, sound design is immersive, and the amount of dynamic events will always keep you laughing, even when it is admittedly jank. Sure, it's not exactly conducive to the story's serious tone to have a bear kill someone and then immediately eat their ass, and then have another character teabag them, but like, what the fuck, man? Show me any other game where you can get something like this. It's finally worth noting that even if the game doesn't completely reinvent the wheel, it's certainly not a long game, as my first playthrough only took about 13 hours, and that's with a considerable amount of farting around and doing most of the side activities. Unfortunately, the story is where a lot are going to be disappointed, as the game doesn't follow the same structure as previous Far Cry games, and that would be fine if the story was better. But if I had to guess, the setting offered too many restrictions for it to tell anything below surface level. Far Cry Primal tells a story not unlike other Far Cry games. Man enters an environment with nothing but a hatred for the oppressive forces that rule, and through both connections and strength, is able to topple the antagonist while engaging in some hypocrisy, seeing as their means of defense always mirrors the oppression levied against them in the first place. The difference with Primal is a lack of a strong villain, the lack of a player critique, and the lack of a satisfying ending. Let's begin by looking at the villains here, as we have both Ull and Battery, with Battery being a clearer poster girl for the game. So we can start with Ull, as it's likely who you'll defeat first. But before we do, let's look at how you arrived in Oros in the first place. Our protagonist is Takar, of the Winja people, and he's on a quest for Oros as he believes it houses the rest of his people. While making a pit stop to hunt a mammoth for food, he's separated from his group and forced to carry on alone. This opening tutorial is one of the best because it immediately teaches us not just the mechanics of the game, but the rules of Oros, the most important of which being this: forget all your encounters with animals in the previous games. These guys don't fuck around. Dropping us into an enclosed area to hunt and gather safely is also great for getting the players introduced to the gameplay loop. Once making it to Oros, Takar encounters Scylla, a Winja who has bad news. The Winja are in Oros, but they're being run out of the place thanks to the Udam who are killing them. Our goal becomes clear, especially as the game operates on the assumption that you kinda know what you're doing by now. Rebuild the Winja, stop the Udam, and with that, you're set off. As we grow our numbers and create a home for Scylla and our newfound shaman friend Tensei, we gain the ability to tame beasts and see what the Udam fear. Before we can get too hasty with tracking them down, their leader Ull shows up to intimidate the Winja, foolishly leaving Takar alive. This is standard Far Cry, but a character like Ull, by the nature of being a Neanderthal, doesn't have the same impact as Pagan Min or Voss. This applies to most of the story, and it's always in an uncomfortable way because so many moments are presented the same as if they had a Voss-like character at the helm, but the aggression everyone exerts is so high that it's hard to see these people as anything more than sophisticated animals. This is why I mentioned the setting potentially inhibiting the story, and I don't intend to make excuses, rather, I want to at least acknowledge the constraints this setting inherently places on the narrative because I simply don't have any ideas on how to fix it. The story overall is fine, but a fine story off the backs of Far Cry 3 and 4, games with good stories, is a noticeable step down and can't be ignored. Even taking down Ull lacks the impact of other villains. Part of what made Pagan and Voss intimidating is that they weren't accessible. You need to work up to them. But this process is fast-tracked in Primal, as the only roadblock for Ull is being able to get past a poison gas that blocks the route to his lair. Sure, weather plays a factor, but it's very easy to craft winter clothing, and if you don't want to, you can easily light a torch on fire to keep you warm as you traverse the mountaintops. I did like the idea of having to adapt to your environment, but even entering Ull's lair is as simple as mowing down a few people, killing Ull, and that's it. The game does try to make us sympathize with him a little bit, as his dying request is that we take care of his children, but that doesn't amount to much when he was such a massive dick throughout the game. If anything, it reframes his actions in a worse way, like, why are you here killing Winja across the map? Go raise your fucking kids, dude. Past this point, we're introduced to Battery and the Azila, a tribe that is actually being less aggressive to the Winja. They are kidnapping them and sacrificing them in the name of a sun god, but are not outright invading their homes, so I don't see them as the same kind of threat. The leader of the Azila is Battery, a character with a great design, killer voice actor, and fine screen presence, but suffers from some of the same issues that Ull did, with the major difference being her intellectualism and faith. Ull felt like the pop culture depiction of cavemen, hardly smarter than the average bear smashing whatever's in their way. The Azila are the next step in our evolution, ones that kill with intention and believe in a higher power. Following in the footsteps of Far Cry 3, the supernatural elements in the game are here, but never leave reality. Due to the visions we see and the setting of our eventual confrontation with Battery, it's assumed that the god they serve is sort of real, but we don't know for sure how or why they believe sacrifices will prevent the apocalyptic event that they fear. Fortunately, this setup is paid off when we find a mask that is believed to have belonged to the Azila god and wear it while we burn their homes to the ground. Brutal, sure, but very cool at the same time. It's not all great though, as Battery's boss fight is incredibly disappointing, especially considering the lead up, which had excellent music, action, and the climax is this? I can't believe I'm saying this, but Battery's kind of a damage sponge. I tried looking this up and found a few forum posts saying the same thing, but I swear, it felt like I was missing something because Battery takes an entire arsenal to the head. Each arrow barely scratches her, and after some of her health is gone, she sends a few waves of Azila after us, I assume, to replenish our resources. It took forever, and generally wasn't fun. Battery can hit you with an arrow no matter how little of your head is peeking above cover, so there's a consistent loop of uncrouching to fire a shot, getting hit, and then entering cover to heal. It was hard, sure, but not in a very fun way that tested my skill, instead just testing my patience. Once Battery is killed, we return home with her bow, and the Winja celebrate. Oh, you wanted a conclusion? Primal isn't so generous, not unless you complete all of the Winja specialist quests. This includes building and upgrading their homes, which was a bit of a grind, but as mentioned, could be a me issue. Once that's done, you get the ending, credits and all, and it just shows that the Winja people now call Oros home and have nothing to fear. Everything's amazing, and I don't know. All of this work just to see the game basically say, and everyone lived happily ever after, feels like a bit of a letdown. No doubt aided by the fact that most players won't see it until long after they kill both Ull and Battery. I think Primal's story would have fared better if the game offered one ending that seemed a little more open-ended, with a true ending being where the current one is. That way people who do all the side content are rewarded, but those wanting to see some kind of conclusion aren't left behind. The ending and story as a whole also failed to answer the question of what happens after. Sure, Battery is killed, but who's to say another Izila won't take her place? Battery herself isn't that much of a direct threat, she's more so the figurehead of the Izila people. Who's to say killing her changes nothing? Same with Ull and the Udam. These people still roam the map and still attack the Wenja on sight. We could have felt the impact of our work more if, say by the time we clear an outpost, we won't see enemies in that region anymore. This would line up with the gradual reclamation of Oros, and would show up in gameplay, because if we need materials, we would likely go to areas we know are safe for the Wenja. The story also doesn't, as mentioned, have the usual critique of the player that makes these games so fun to talk about. I should acknowledge that the Far Cry games never have deep critiques of the player, and are never going to incite deep philosophical or existential reflection, and I don't expect that from Primal. But Far Cry 3 looked at how easy it is for the player to become someone capable of effortlessly committing horrendous acts, and 4 looked at the hypocrisy that comes from such bloodshed, especially when said acts are being done in retaliation to the very same bloodshed from those above you. Primal has these same themes. In order to secure the Wenja's safety, Takar is willing to slaughter an entire population. And it's not like this is an unprompted retaliation, but I think the story could have improved if we had some kind of reflection from Takar. Something to make him look at himself in the water's reflection and say, "Me bad guy?" In spite of this, there are still parallels with Primal and the other games, such as the personal growth as you conquer Oros. This personal journey to me was much more engaging than the story at the forefront. But at what point is that not enough? Fortunately, not totally at this point, because after everything, I still found myself having fun while going through the story, and the setting alone was enough to keep me entertained, which applies to Far Cry Primal as a whole, too. Looking to the future of Far Cry, we can see that Primal had a significant impact on the rest of the series. This was the first game to have a scouting mechanic that would crop up in Assassin's Creed, the first game to have 2 antagonists operating at the same time, and the first game to place a heavy emphasis on hunting, a system that otherwise was a footnote. Some have noted that the identity of the Far Cry series has been corroding with each entry, and I don't blame some people for claiming that that started here, because it's technically true. However, I think this game still has enough of that DNA, and it is a spin-off, so
Ionoots. If anything, Pauline got more popular due to Odyssey. Was she in Odyssey? Is Pauline the one that's in Donkey Kong's game? The one that he got for the Switch 2? Is that the one that the girl that's with him? The one who's like, I love to sing?
Yes.
Okay. This started because I was gonna say, I get why Pauline doesn't have that many skins because she's a new character, but that I guess that doesn't make sense anymore. I was gonna say, it doesn't make any sense that Donkey Kong doesn't have any skins with how prominent he is in the Mario world. Really weird to me that he has nothing.
Okay. Hey, yo, Newts.
Have I shared with you my theory on Pauline, Daisy, and Rosalina?
No.
And how they are all just Norded Peach?
What?
They're Norded forms of Peach.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of crazy how all the women kind of just look the same.
Just like in Overwatch.
Oh my god. Do you think they were inspired by Mario?
Actually, it's not so bad in Overwatch now. From what I see, I think they have made 1 or 2 other faces.
Yeah, they have a black woman now.
And then
That
they
isn't-
yeah.
What the fuck is this conversation?
Does it really count?
I don't even know what. Like, can you describe how he looks like?
I'm counting her. I'm black. I'm counting.
Can you describe how he looks like?
God.
That's fair.
Oh, wait.
Or it's just creator.
Anyway, I made a room.
Oh, okay. Let me abandon the highway I was on.
Let me shoot an invite to this boy since he doesn't read chat ever.
God. Now, how do I join? Online chat. I'm guessing.
Go online, look for friends, and okay.
Oh,
Oh, that's Strangey. Hi, Strangey.
Hello. It's me. Mario.
How can other people join?
They can join through you.
Okay.
We can join through you or.
Dark Souls 3 is schmoovin'. Playing the trilogy in a straight line really makes the speed boost in 3 stick out. It's strange, however. While the combat animations are faster, the slower Souls pace persists. Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 and 2 slowed player speed in equal measure, giving inputs great weight and consequence when poorly timed. Bloodborne punishes bad inputs with double damage taken and lost rally potential, whereas Elden Ring bludgeoned you with high attack density. Without these countermeasures, Dark Souls 3 exists in an awkward middle ground. Bolstered player speed allows exploiting lopsided openings, leading to the much maligned straight sword meta, later replaced by the sellsword windblades. R1 spam reigns supreme when the reward outweighs the risk. Then when taking into account us being forged in the faster fires of Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring, Dark Souls 3 plays in slow motion. And when you account for my triple-digit speedrun hours logged, Dark Souls 3 is a prime candidate for a one-sided whooping. Today we'll see how that played out. My goal this go-around was to continue our run on strength to avoid the R1 spam meta. I set my eyes on the Dragon Slayer Great Axe, which meant I'd need to slay Dancer early. Killing only Gundyr, Vort, and Sage gives access to the DLC's plentiful upgrade materials, powering a +7 mates to waltz through the Dancer. Lothric Castle's Bounty Chunks and Scales power the mace to +9, bashing in Dragon Slayer Armor's non-existent skull for his soul. Finally, I ball-busted the Curse-Routed Greatwood for the Transposing Kiln, and claimed my fully upgraded prize. This Thunderous Cleaver lives up to the hype I'd heard, with a weapon art showing what made the axe truly great. I took an arduous road of blood, sweat, and tears to acquire ultimate power. I needed a testing ground. Deacons of the Deep will do nicely. Let's be real, I could take a soup ladle into battle here and we'd still be laughing them all the way to the bottom. It's a game of hot potato. We quickly slay the highlighted deacons to summon the main body. Imagine seeing your minions disposed of so effortlessly and thinking a barrier of obese acolytes is enough to save you.
You underestimate my
Smash!
power.
Smash!
Shed your false idols and worship the new god of thunder. This fight is like a reverse Pinwheel. There's a boatload of copies already made, but they're worthless. At least Pinwheel has damage. These fireballs could barely singe an ice cube, let alone a Ashen HP reservoir. Even if I had brought a weaker build to the table, it only makes the flaccid experience overstay its welcome. At least High Lord Wolnir has pizzazz. His welcome gives a good jump scare to newbies. As someone who's got a pile of broken bracelets to his name, that scare is more and less. The battle maintains a similar lack of engagement. His initial movements are scripted, allowing you to break the first bracelet consistently. The way he staggers after each is broken is also reliable, meaning the entire fight is on rails when executed properly. If it was tough to do, maybe we'd be having a different discussion, but it's not. Especially if you've rated the DLC for strong enough upgrades to shatter them in 2 to 3 hits. There is a world where he summons the sword, makes hitting the bracelets a pain while unleashing actual scary attacks, but it hasn't come to that in years. This is an on-rails snooze fest that barely holds more threat than the pathetic popes. To really hammer in just how laughable their minuscule difficulty is, take in that Ancient Wyvern managed to scrape above them, a boss that you don't even fight. Instead, you dash across a mini-stage with dragon assassins. Problem is, you can smoothly sprint through it all. Their behavior is almost entirely scripted, removing any hint of danger. The only one who can thwart your ascent is the chain guy. If you don't bait a heavy attack as you pass, there's a chance he can use his range to strike you on the ladder. That will flop you to the ground and likely spell your doom. Across countless speedruns through the Wyvern's funhouse, I can count the times this has happened on one hand. The reality is there's hardly anything to pose a threat here. It's an eye-bulletproof route to a guaranteed one-shot. Yet the ball and chain destroying that consistency even 1% of the time rises above Deacons and Wolnir. Yorm the Giant is much like the game at large. An awkward middle child of spectacle fights that introduces compelling mechanics without complexity to let them shine. Needing to charge the Storm Ruler is an interesting take over the Demon Souls instant fire variant. The long animation requires thought as to when you can pull it off. Yorm simply does too little to make that a challenge. Run through his legs as you bait an attack, charge, and blow your load. 5 rounds for a knockout. His attempts to stomp and roast you are futile. There are simply too many long recovery animations to make the wind charge an actual burden. At least Yorm is memorable. If it weren't for using the wiki to ensure I didn't miss anyone, old Demon King would have escaped my notice. I only bothered to kill him for completion's sake near the end of a playthrough. By that time, I possess enough power to continuously stagger him into his long and rage animation I can out DPS to death. I only rate him higher than others on potential. Theoretically, his radiating stomps and hammer could add stress to the experience, but all too often it's a forgettable curb stomp. Bust-a-Nut Simulator is also pretty easy when you're packing a +9 mace. All it takes is a single sack tap to send the Great Wood spiraling. Like Wolnir, if you possess extraordinary damage, you can manipulate scripted moves to best him in a sequence of controlled stun locks. His only real danger is the tummy arm that I've always been
is it
awful
the
at
one
avoiding.
that
Pumping vigor to the high heavens makes any of these blunders negligible.
where the brother is
At
on
least
the
Vorpal
back
the
of
Boreal
his
Valley is a boss you can't
the
outspeed.
boss?
Thanks to his linear
And they
blockade,
teleport?
at best you can scrounge Titanite shards around the level for a +2 upgrade with supplementary lightning resin. Though
There,
that's more than
like
enough to
that
abuse
one's
his
on a
enormous derriere.
castle.
His
I don't know how
animations
high
and
we're
his
talking
whack
about.
underbelly hitboxes
Another one
make
is like
standing in
a
and behind it safe. Even the Mad Rush only serves to dash his ass back under my nose. He even has the Velstaff.
It could be
problem
that
with a buff
one.
animation
It
that
could
shaves
be
you
the
even for half the way for
one
free.
where
His only advantage is suppressing your build to a weak state where mistakes can
where
be
it's
a little
part
stressful, as unlikely
like
as you are to make
worm
them.
and part
This proves outscaling
human
isn't everything with these
on the
lists,
upper body,
as does EX Gundy.
and shoots a shit
Whether
ton of
I'm
arrows at
level
you.
1 or 100, nothing can stop me from parrying his
Okay.
every move. A few parries, fire bombs, and R1 spamming the beast within is all it takes. Yes, this does require taking the black fire bombs, but what else would you
could
take?
be.
Not only are they valuable assets for Gundyr, saving one is a free Titanite chunk from Pickle P. That'll pump my rum any day of the week. Gundyr is the perfect tutorial boss. He makes newbies prove themselves in a worthy trial, one that expires for seasoned players who toy with him in return. I'm always excited for what new toys a FromSoft DLC will bring. Ashes of Ariandel is the tale of two halves, with champions Grave Tender and Great Wolf making up a disappointing rear. Killing 5 enemies is tougher than a lot of bosses in theory, but if you kite well and flex AoE skills, downing 3 wolves while peppering the Grave Tender to get electrified after is all too easy. As long as you rush him down, you can get a cozy 1v1 with the Great Wolf. After fighting the likes of Sif and Royal Rat Authority, juking his dashes was child's play. From there, simply R1 spam until the pack leader is whimpering in defeat. It's time to get controversial. Most agree that Yorm is the easiest Lord of Cinder. Who here agrees Abyss Watchers are hardly a cut above him? Glass cannons can't withstand the real deal. I know Early Dancer for full upgrades isn't a path many take, but the DLC is freely available to all for little cost. And that's an easy +7 weapon. They straight up cannot withstand that type of damage output. Let's say you were packing a +4 weapon. Easily obtainable by this point, they can't even withstand that. The unfortunate thing is this lopsided affair has all the makings of difficulty. Great range, long combos, huge gap closers, and a second phase that amplifies it all with fiery after effects. I can attest to this, as being bullied by it in spite of my overpowered approach. I desperately wish the Abyss Watchers were held for endgame, where bolstered defense would allow the encounter to shine. As it stands, it's too easy to stop.
Playing with mouse and keyboard and complain about that, you only have yourself to blame for choosing to play mouse and keyboard.
Dark Souls 2 takes the difficulty ascension cake this time around. The Desert of Descent belongs to Lothric and Lorien, the twin princes. The more I experience this encounter, the more I understand they were never excessively difficult. I just blew harder than Lothric breathing eternal life into Lorien. I was a damage sponge soaking up embarrassing errors, bored of my own greed. These days, I'm able to strafe moves successfully for greater attack uptime and no loss. Heck, more often than not, if you position well, attacks outright whiff. All you have to do is wait for your turn by checking combo's end, take your opening, rinse and repeat. Mid-combo teleports are not the problem I ever made them out to be. It's simple, just don't attack until the animations conclude. If you only press your advantage, you'll shred through Lorien's meager HP as fast as he can blink away. In the second phase, adept positioning chunks through both brothers, and often keeps them locked into close engagements. In the event they do teleport away, the big attacks have huge recovery to punish. It's been a night and day difference. I can't believe I ever complained they were one of the game's hardest bosses. Their difficulty is balanced brilliantly, even if a truer look keeps them from cracking the top half. It's sad to see such a great battle be surpassed by garbage like Half-Light Spear of the Church. While easy in theory, there are loads of potential failure points nothing this far possesses. I cannot fathom why they pan the camera correctly for Yorm, yet I'm expected to glue my eyes to Argo's feet. Even more maddening, the most tells are obscured by his long robes. And after you execute the oath, you get to fight a Painting Guardian. Yippee! More fan service easily extinguished. Then either fight an NPC or a player woefully outmatched by the host's resources. We'll be focusing on the NPC. He has multiple modes, the one-handed katana that is a parry trap within human reactions, two-handed offense with an input reading weapon art staggering you to high heaven, and a bow that is good to run in on and punish if you can reach him in time. This is difficult amidst automatically summoned soul arrows and massive persisting spikes that block your path. After all of your efforts to make it into range, if he chooses none of these counters, he exploits the player's hypercharged animation speed to spam roll like a Donkey Kong barrel. All of this forces you to play safe to an insufferable degree. After taking ages to find a good rhythm with him, you have to watch out for a scripted Painting Guardian summoned to gank you. It's worth tanking damage to stagger it, otherwise it heals Half-Light. In spite of all this belly aching, it's not that hard to best Half-Light if you're patient, and only take your guaranteed punishes. Everything he does is easy to evade, it's only that good openings are hard to come by. This punishes my patience to the brink, making this more mentally taxing than mechanically challenging. In the inverse to Twin Princes, I received loads of comments back in the day calling me crazy for ranking the Crystal Sage solo. How could it be hard when you can plow through the first half so easily? In fact, I ignore all the various tracking spells, homing soul arrows, and magic sword in favor of the rare true weapon, one you can parry and chop away half his HP in return. This, of course, is only the beginning. What follows is being surrounded
when we
by
play together, you are
going
to start from scratch, right?
Mages happy to fill you with magical bullet
Okay.
holes. While identifying the real one's purple magic isn't difficult, it's tough to balance every clone firing at you while you try to finish off the main body. You can call the clones, but it wastes valuable time before the main body teleports again, resummoning them all. So I tend to rely on blind confidence and DS3's main anthem. R1 spam first, ask questions later. And as you can see, that worked out by two clones behind me nearly railing my entire, quite large HP bar. If you opt to invest your stats elsewhere, these mages are masters of shattering glass cannons. In my case, I level my HP like my life quite literally depends on it. I'm no dodge god, I'm only a mere mortal that needs an error margin to fall back on. With it, Crystal Sage's soul threat becomes an afterthought to tank through. Whereas high HP is the key to mitigating magic, parrying is the Achilles heel of Pontiff Sullivan. It's very much appreciated since it's not build specific and puts skill expression on brilliant display. If you pull it off, you can delete a significant amount of health consistently as an opener. So much in fact, he tried to summon his clone right away. With good timing and damage, you can delete it in an instant. If not, prepare to deal with staggered 1-2 punches that will have you on the ropes. If you succeed though, it's back to parry fishing, though without the script it's a lot harder to execute. Failing to do so subjects you to his unrelenting pressure that can quickly shave through even endgame vitality. It's all about parry control, something I'm good enough at to suppress Pontiff into the high teens. The same is true for Champion Gundyr. If you can parry, this fight is won before it even begins. Or so I thought. It's probably wise to have a shield out if you mean to parry, right? Funny enough, even with such a foolish mistake, I recovered quite well from getting slapped around. He is demanding, but there's a lot more recovery opportunities than I recall. This echoes my impression in the introduction. What used to feel absurdly fast has become a crawl. These breathers allow you to regain composure and take back control. Even with substandard parry performance, Gundyr pales in the light of a true champion. Aldrich Devourer of Gods, on the other hand, requires cleaner execution if you don't want the worst of its kit to rear its ugly head. That is to say, you are in complete control of the difficulty. He will always teleport to the furthest corner from your position. You can use this knowledge to bait and rush the spawn corner to prevent magic and arrow spam. If you fail, you're forced to deal with those layers of persistent offense while he either dashes in with fierce melee or teleports again for more range spam. Let's say it does go swimmingly, with you controlling the tempo. You still have to dodge his melee attacks and his weird body hitboxes. If you don't, he dishes out obscene damage, especially adding in his enkindled embers shaving away your HP. It's a lot of mechanics to juggle, but I've never found it too demanding. If there's a single thing I do find difficult, it's not overextending during his teleports for extra damage. As long as you're diligent in controlling the tempo, it's easy enough to make him your old bitch. But what happens when I can't hide like a bitch behind parries or AI manipulation to gain an advantage? You get an all-out brawl like Dragon Slayer armor. All it takes is old-fashioned understanding of his kit and flexing quick reactions to it. For example, his stagger is bait, intending for the player to attack from the front and get caught out by the delayed slam. If you're aware, you can step behind a maximum range to evade and maintain full uptime. This fight embodies that tit-for-tat style where you wait for the armor to attack and give the best response to defend and counterattack in the window you earn. What adds difficulty beyond your average encounter is the sheer size and speed the armor has. For such cumbersome gear, it moves around like lightning, with multiple hit combos volleying between the axe and shield demanding flawless evasion. Meanwhile, you need to be mindful of your positioning to ensure you don't get blasted by the flying monster shooting line AoEs through the bridge. Or worse, succumbing to gravity. This fight is an excellent example of how juggling multiple moving parts adds stress, even if my years of slaying Ornstein skeletons have me juggling with ease. Perhaps no boss was more daunting on vanilla release than Nameless King. We all were buying into the hype at the time. Before Ishin or Malenia, Nameless was the gold standard people used to define Souls boss difficulty, largely thanks to attack delays that became a staple in Elden Ring. Rather than attacks being reaction based on the windup, you had to observe and memorize delayed timings. The best example of this is his lightning charge. There is no sensible way to react to the insanely fast lightning strike that homes in on you from above the camera seconds later. You simply have to get hit by it and memorize the moment of impact. This entire kit is filled with sequences like this. It's matched by deceptive range and inescapable closing speed to exert unrelenting pressure. Your best bet is to make the most of the small windows between combos, even tanking damage if necessary. FromSoft balanced his high aggression with true staggers, something that to this point was exclusive to parrying. This too was a theme carried into Elden Ring. Essentially, Nameless King is an Elden Ring boss alpha. That alone lends him to higher difficulty, yet ample experience in the lands between has aged this battle into a shell of its former self. Even with my lightning great axe being resisted, I had no trouble juking his delays and unleashing thunderous blows. He can't resist getting fisted when brought to his knees. Osiros the Consumed King has only one move you need to fear, that god-awful charge. Turning his entire body into a hitbox, he will flatten you like a 10-ton steamroller. Outside of that, he's rather tame, as long as you camp on his hip and whack away at max melee. This makes it less likely he'll turn on a dime and bull rush you. With my mighty Thunder Slams, I corralled the beast into a corner where the charge never came into play. Eliminating his sole threat made this more cakewalk than chaotic rodeo. Dancer of the Boreal Valley trades chaos for a smoother tango. Her attacks have a gentle flow by appearance, but don't be deceived. They pack a wallop. The first phase is a slow introduction to her moveset with mostly single attacks, then the second unleashes dual blades for a much spicier affair. Those previous solo blows are now chained into wombo combos that can delete your health bar if careless. You can counter this with good evasion, or simply sprinting away. Doing so pushes her kit into shallower options that are easier to respond to, like her spin to win that can be consistently dodged into for a huge punish. You can also strafe many attacks to maximize stamina and attack uptime, primarily by staying glued to those huge hips. I'll be honest, I expected to struggle with this a lot more with her as my fourth boss, but good memory of her moveset, careful play, rating the DLC for a +7 weapon, and pumping all my levels into HP made this a one-shot speed bump to thunderous power. You can't outscale the endgame though. Sola Cinder remains the base game's hardest challenge. Fueled by advantages like speed and animation recovery comparable to the player, the deepest move pool in the game with a wide variety of mini phases, and massive HP reserves. He loses ground to the DLC juggernauts to come by being staggered, and to the shallow second phase with limited moves and consistent openings. For example, you can evade the start of his 5-hit combo for last minute damage, then roll into the final hit to trade minor burns for another hefty punish. I approach this fight as a DPS rush where I'm willing to tank a few hits in order to reach the staggers and second phase faster. Once I do, it feels like a guaranteed win, even if you make crucial mistakes like getting grabbed. Healing reserves are able to well outlast your careless R1 spam. The Ring City changes this by making boss health gargantuan. Take the Demon Princes. You're expected to mow down not one, but 2 bat-like monsters, then watch them do a fusion dance to become Satan with the HP of an ocean. This change forces you to be more selective in trading damage, a tricky proposition when juggling 2 bosses. Personally, I say forget that noise. Bum rush the duo as fast as possible to cut the odds to 1v1. If you're fast enough, you can slay the inactive demon, killing him right as the other one flames out, maximizing time spent fighting their easier forms. The less time you spend fighting the active one with both alive, the less likely you are to have toxic shoved up your behind. The final showdown against the Big Prince feels like a carrot on a stick. You spend more time chasing the damn thing than actually fighting. Difficulty here feels more like exasperation over the hassle than true mechanical difficulty. True difficulty is reserved for the top 3, where we take a mountainous leap upward. Slave Knight Gale boasts similar HP reserves to the princes, while packing difficulty greater than both phases combined. His feral form mixes hard-to-read tells requiring quick-twitch reactions with nameless-style delays. The juxtaposition is unnerving, never letting you establish a comfortable rhythm. You dwell in a constant anxiety, mustering all your wits and dexterity to survive. As you get reps in, you grow more comfortable and learn where to take advantage. For example, his unique stagger mechanic, where he stuns briefly after a set amount of hits. Once you learn how many it takes for your weapon, you can use this knowledge to interrupt attacks for a defensive save and greater damage. This carries into the unforgettable second phase, where he gains composure and unleashes his inner guts. He now rains crossbow bolts, boomerang discs, and soul-possessed cape after effects to layer danger around every turn. His melee was already plenty to deal with. Whereas the first phase relies mostly on dodging in the right direction, now positioning becomes crucial. Bolts can be strafed, the boomerang discs can be avoided by moving perpendicular, while the cape makes evasion demands more precise than ever. Finding out how to exploit these minuscule windows for better uptime, continuing to take advantage of the unique stagger, and executing as his offense becomes more death-defying makes this an encounter to remember. One of the series' best, and certainly one of Dark Souls 3's most demanding. I often say difficulty and quality aren't necessarily correlated, but having Gale and Sister Fried back-to-back raises an eyebrow. A titan of quality, the good sister has an excellent crescendo of difficulty across her 3 phases. The first phase is a modest glass cannon, boasting moderate to high damage while having the lowest HP we've seen in quite a while. It's a well-crafted introduction to her base melee mechanics, while showing you how to take advantage of her invisible dashes and backstab windows. The second phase, she takes a passive approach, with ranged frostbite AoEs, while Father Ariandel steps into the heavy aggro role. He smashes his way towards you, but like a matador, you can manipulate his pursuit to split the duo, and wail freely on Big Daddy. Fried's AoEs do well to force thoughtful positioning, and Father Ariandel does at least have some threat in melee range. Fried's other attack to watch for is the heal, where she assuages their shared health. I like the balance of making her otherwise passive for a long duration to pull it off, making it easy to 1v1 the Father. You can make the heal meaningless doing this by going full Unga Bunga. The finale reignites Fried into a flaming version of herself, adding in explosive attacks, along with enhanced melee and frostbite. Even a whiff of ice was enough to inflict the status, meaning I'd take bonus damage and lose stamina regeneration. Fried's potency skyrockets as a result, making proper evasion vital. Easier said than done with 5 to 6 hit wombo combos, full arena gap closers, invisible misdirection, homing missile black flame bombardment, and deadly grabs. The only ding on Fried's climb to number 1 is how good I am at backstabbing her. It's the fastest way to manage tempo if you can reliably exploit her behind. Along with Strength Stagger keeping her at bay more than I was used to, it suppresses her from reaching the pinnacle of today's list. A mountain only Dark Eater Midir can climb. He is a mechanical masterpiece boasting a huge move pool. To balance reading it, tells are very distinct with consistent movement. You know the moment an attack begins, the exact position it will end. This allows you to triangulate where his head will land in advance, leaving an opening for you to earn through observation and timely reaction. That said, he clobbered me from start to finish. His hitboxes are appropriately dragon-sized, making dodge timing and positioning very tight. Time away rusted my reactions to the point I was trading damage at a losing pace. As the battle raged on, I felt muscle memory kick in, as I'd let my boots be singed by flames at the perfect angle to rush in for a good skull bash. Momentum may have shifted in my favor, but his best-in-class damage and health made sure those mistakes wore me down to the brink in the final moments. It made my photo finish dry on Estus exhilarating. I was beaming, immediately wanting a rematch to see if I could clean up my spotty performance. And that right there is when you know it's true love. What pushed Midir over Fried was a difference in resources. I faced Fried as my 7th boss to access the Ring City early for some +3 rings. I wasn't even close to maxing my Estus at the time. If I took those same values to Midir, there's no chance I would have gotten my narrow one-shot. It was a close call, but Midir soars above the competition to reign as Dark Souls 3's difficulty champion. Replaying this game was the complete inverse of my Dark Souls 2 experience. The bosses rocked my socks off with quality across the wide majority. Again, reiterating, quality doesn't equal difficulty in spite of my top choices. I love bosses like Yorm, Yedex Gundyr, Twin Princes, Abyss Watchers, and Pontiff Sullivan, even if they aren't topping my difficulty charts these days. It was the playthrough itself I didn't enjoy. Dark Souls 3 is painfully linear compared to its trilogy counterparts. It made exploration feel less rewarding, and I found the middle child combat I described at the outset underwhelming compared to its better balanced peers. It may be my personal least favorite FromSoft game, but it's well worth the journey for the bosses alone. Next time, we'll be returning to Bloodborne to see if it remains one of my favorite games of all time, with bosses to boot. Subscribe to stay tuned.
From like the second race and having to rejoin has tanked my score significantly.
You get disconnected?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was wondering why you had 0 points at one race. I was like, can't be right.
Yeah, I got disconnected like right before this race started. I don't like Sky High Sunday.
As long as I'm better than winning. Wow.
As long as I beat the babies, I don't care.
Orion deserves do well.
I just want to beat the babies.
But based off of my own merit.
Those things are disgust. Oh.
It's the only non-transition track on the quick pick. That was gonna happen.
Free thinkers when
there's a track that's actually a track.
I've never thought a day in my life. I just thought this looked pretty. Like, ooh, colors.
I mean,
Dungeon first and then later.
the glow up this track got.
No!
Yeah,
That's it. It's over for all of you. It's one thing to blue shell me. It's another to red shell me right over a gap.
Alright, time to go on the curve.
I remember there's a thing you can do now with that.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Bowser. Wow.
I saw the massive items you were holding, and I was not risking that.
Shit.
Oh, dang it.
It almost happened again in the exact same place. Wild. But I lived, bitch.
Final.
got hit by the blue shell.
My one coin.
Oh! Well, I almost hit myself with my own bomb. Ain't that fun? Ow.
Well, at least the coin did pay off somewhat.
Whoever's in fourth, do you want to trade with me? I'm in fifth.
Right, god damn it, I'm fucked.
Yay.
God damn it. I won this fucking race. Eric just decided, why don't
Hi,
stop
Corey.
a wall ride for some reason.
No! 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 Oh, that was...
God, alright.
That was horrible.
Y'all having fun back there?
I experienced the 7 circles of hell in 3 very short seconds.
I won it twice tonight.
Yeah, I'm starting to warm back up to the disgusting shortcuts this game has.
Bro, you got 69 points. Nice.
I'm just trying not to fall off. Good job, Husk. Good job.
Thank you.
GG.
GG.
The problem is sometimes you have to almost fall off to take a shortcut.
I'm just scared of like, because I see some of the shortcuts and I'm like, I know if I try this, I'm gonna fall for like 15 times. Oh, what did I do?
Well, that's why free roaming exists. That way you could practice at least a large majority of them.
Yeah, if you want to.
All right, Oric.
Except for the 20,000
one in chat. Thank you for joining.
It's the Balzaban needs to sign that's only there during the race.
Yeah.
I'm not
But
really anymore.
at least there's versus mode for without the
I
computer.
tried
that
the
you can
stat
do.
on time trials.
Oh, am I the room host now or something?
What was that?
What?
Oh, it's saying start game. I think.
Oh,
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
Because I disconnected.
Corey died.
So hello, Salto.
Hello.
All right.
Wish to remain crab.
Want to do the same thing we did before?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah. Actually, no. I need to be the diva herself.
Oh, hurry up, cow. We love it.
I should make a cow skin that gives her a bra. Hello.
Who goes there?
It me.
Oh, hi.
Keltio.
Oh, hi, Kel.
Hello, hello.
You guys picked the absolute worst time to play Mecha Chameleon.
Oh, why?
We're playing Mario Kart.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Good luck, though. Have fun.
Thanks. Oh, I'm in the wrong. I just realized. Whoopsie.
Yeah.
Hi. I thought you just came to say hi. Well, I was like, that's nice.
Of course, I always come and say hi.
Figuring this out.
You know me. You know too. You know what? Shut up.
Kel, it says Mario Kart. Never mind. Go.
Do I look like I pay attention?
No.
You're too
I
big
think
to
you
read
read
the
that as
sign.
macro world.
I need macro glasses, but I don't make those.
Isn't that just
Okay, bye.
magnifying glasses? Which I
Maybe.
guess that's kind of what glasses do, but
Hi, Kel.
Does
Hi, Kel.
smacking my joystick left and right while drifting still do anything, or is that an old?
Somewhat.
a little bit. Like it's more like
If you
the speed of
lean
how fast
into
it
your
charges.
drift, it goes up.
I see.
You know we haven't played Crossroads in a while.
I don't remember.
And also
I mean,
Weapons.
Jesus Christ, I forgot those enemies existed.
I miss Lethal Company. I'd love to play that again.
I forgot those enemies existed, but I don't remember.
I like it when Sonic
You can
Crossroads
try.
came out. People were like, "Oh,
Go
this
for
is
it.
Sorry, bye Mario Kart, you're fading." And then I stopped hearing about Sonic Crossroads like 2 weeks later. I'm sure people do. I'm sure
Yeah.
people do.
I'm like I like
Crossroads isn't no fun.
I like Crossroads. I like things about it, but like I prefer Mario Kart. Like I think like not necessarily in a comparison to Mario Kart versus Sonic, but I just think it's more of a for a Sonic racing game in particular. I think that's probably better than Crossroads in my opinion.
Honestly, any game that has Vector in it is the W.
I agree. Wait, is Vector in Sonic Crossroads?
Yeah.
I'm getting Mario Kart refunded right now.
Dude, I'm still mad I'm 31 for the older than
Wow.
Vector. Vector's like 21. He's too young for me.
Oh no. This is what I get for swapping off of Crab.
I mean, you beat me if anything.
Nice,
so
right?
good job.
Jesus.
It took swapping to the Diva to get third place. I'll take it.
That was a butt clenching.
Yeah, somehow
cold-
somehow you didn't get hit by the red shell.
I think I might have let it into a crab or something.
No crabs
Mike,
at the end.
well, maybe. And my screen just collided with you, and then your banana was gone. Even though I specifically waited for it to rotate out of the way.
We love weird lag thingamabobs.
To
It
shut
sure
people out while we're
is a
between
thing.
races. Hi,
Speaking
Magic.
of weird lag, Oric, were you hit by my red shell while you were wall riding in Sky High Sunday?
No, I'm pretty sure I managed to block them.
I like how most of us picked Dino.
Oh no, it did hit me just at the very, very end. So I just
A bunch of furries picking Dino down in the jungle? What a surprise.
I mean,
Color me shocked.
it's a good track. I like it.
I haven't been to it.
Besides, it's from Double Dash. We love
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah,
Wait,
that-
I don't remember.
Yeah.
It looks so different.
It's
It
hugely different.
It
Like
went
my
from
name isn't there.
to Jurassic Park for lack of a better term.
I really like DK Spaceport. I tried it the
That
other day, and that
one's
was really fun.
That one's like a solid one.
Alright, I'm playing Crossroads. Maybe. I don't know. It took me this long to say yes to Mario Kart. We'll see.
I mean, it took me a little bit to actually get Crosswords like myself after it came out. Mainly because I was waiting for the Switch 2.
What like
what?
non-Sonic characters are in Crossroads? 'Cause I'm assuming there are other Sega properties. in
Haunting
there.
Miku, Choker, a couple of Yakuza characters,
Mega Man.
Errol,
Yes, famous Sega property, SpongeBob.
Steve from Minecraft,
Minecraft.
Oh.
Mega Man, Pac-Man, the Ghost of Pac-Man, soon to be the Ninja Turtles and Avatar characters.
No, Ulala, I'm out.
Not yet, at least.
Add her in
Yes,
and then
that's-
we'll talk.
You know what? I saw Pauline and I thought, there's something here. But then there's something missing name tag.
Yeah, Quinn said she's gonna join.
Yep.
I can see the end on the horizon.
Sorry, Zeta, it had to happen.
Wait for the keyboard woman.
I feel bad for hitting my friends with... not my friends. I don't feel bad for hitting my friends. I feel bad for hitting the NPCs with items.
Don't. The CPUs will do things to you if you're not.
Yeah, but they're just babies. Not doing...
They deserve it because
this
they're
game,
babies.
no, they're not.
I streamed Mario Kart the other day, and me and some friends and any other viewers that were playing got beaten by a CPU toadette. So there you go.
Yeah, no,
Well-
the CPUs do fucking power up.
Hello, baby. Hello, hello. Oi, oi,
Were you trying to attack him?
Yeah.
Well, come over here with me? Okay.
Oh, I hit the grass. I just missed the ground.
Right here.
Missed the chemical too.
I was trying to hit it with the loud box thing.
Usually weird when you actually choose to go towards me.
What if you slowed down for me?
Well, I did a little bit from the grass. You're welcome.
Yay! And also the blue shell. Yay! I'm so sorry that happened to you.
It happens all the time.
Oh, I'm doing so bad.
Oh, dang it.
No. Oh no. Me getting hit by that Triceratops suddenly rewoke all those memories of Double Dash. Like, you know what? I do remember this from Double Dash.
Wait.
No.
I mean, it's funny. This track has more dinosaurs than the Double Dash version. So that's something. Ow!
The bomb dropped in my face.
Give me Piranha Plants. Wait, Piranha Plant Place, base. Heck yeah, I don't know.
That ruined my drift.
It ruined my drift, but like
Yes.
early enough.
I don't know.
Fuck you, by the way, Strange.
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
You fucking
What's up?
Why did you get red cell backwards?
Because I was in first.
Well, you hit me with your shell immediately.
That one hurt.
Why are you orange?
I don't know.
He's the AK rep for us since he's playing Mecha Chameleon.
Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine would appreciate the orange Yoshi.
Who's shrinking me?
Bro's too orange and biteable.
And now you're white in the cool outfit. I like the cool outfit.
I love this Yoshi.
Please, can we have Airship Fortress?
Well, I can change that. I can change it and select it. That's what I can do.
Yay.
Like, you can pick whatever track you want.
Please, please. Yes.
Mogmamon, welcome in.
Yay! Yeah. We did
What
it.
is this hellish place? Say it hi.
Airship Fortress from Mario Kart DS.
I barely remember that game.
Fair.
Yeah, it's the one where you can snake like insane.
I put
We're going to do something eventually.
You're right, I was. And I still will.
Bully a Birdo. Take that.
Stranger
Birdo.
Evil.
Influence so
That
slow
ugly
right
bird
now.
stole the double item box, and I got nothing. Someone eat that thing.
Smug.
The poor people who just live here, I think. Then again, then the
Yeah.
same people who are sometimes just, I don't know, carting around bombs for whatever
Being an
reason.
obstacle.
This
Working
is just
for-
Miami traffic.
That's so true.
Oh, hold on a minute.
Like, I love how I was making really good time getting home yesterday, and then there was a fucking car accident, which added 20 minutes to my ride.
You crashed the car? Damn.
What? No, I'm a good driver. Salto can vouch for me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Can you vouch for me being a good driver because I helped drive back from Las
Who's
Vegas?
this ostrich?
So true.
I thought that didn't slow Salto down at all. Though.
Yeah,
It
GG,
just
GG.
stop.
Oh,
I had to grab
no.
dinner
A
real quick,
stream,
so
I was freaking
that was the last race, I think, right?
Yeah.
I don't
You
know.
know what?
I will be right
10th place is the new first place.
It has a 1 in
I
it.
mean, yeah, just removed the 0 on your
What is 10th
The higher-
place but 1 with an extra 0? And we ignore
The
zeros.
higher the number, the better anyway. Oh my god, Strangey got 72 points.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine if you had 5 less points?
5? I think you need way more.
Good job, Stranger. Congratulations.
Hold on.
GG.
That was fun.
Quinn has joined. Hi, Quinn.
Gaming.
Okay, Miss Cow, you actually did worse. We're removing you. We're going back to. We're going to return to Crab as all will in time.
I love Drybones so much. I should
Drybones
give
is
him
so
clothes.
cute.
He is
Drybones
cute.
is great.
Like, how are you cuter when you're dead than you are alive? Like,
The
seriously.
Dry Bones fandom is
Yeah.
dying. Retweet if you're a true boner.
Is the Dry Bones
Retweet.
fandom drying up? I'll be here
Alright.
all for the next 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, those guys. I really don't like those guys, man. The fact that they just like
I'm gonna use
deplete your health
the
that quick because of
Lead
their
aesthetic
spell.
scooter. This is actually a really cute scooter.
Oh yeah.
I wish they had this aesthetic on the bikes, but that's okay.
Awesome.
I'll just scoot cutely instead.
Trying to think. Do you have a smart steering on or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
I'm back, but
Me?
I have to eat dinner, so I'm going
Yeah.
to bow out
I
for
don't
the
know.
time being.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
What do you
yeah,
do?
I can see the antenna.
Okay.
That's crazy.
What is
Yeah, I
that?
just noticed it basically keeps you off road.
Oh.
On road,
How do I turn that off?
When you select your vehicle, you hit like a button to open like the setting for it.
Change.
Also, who's the room leader? Who's the room host? Oh, Orianus.
I am? Okay.
Yeah.
Settings controller?
That's pretty
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. There we go.
Strangey went to go eat dinner.
Yeah, I'm in there right now,
Cursed.
though.
Yeah, those guys were
Yeah, I
so
can see
annoying
the
and still annoying
I
in
need
to this
focus
day.
on-
Yeah, that's fine.
What are you
Are we
eating?
ready?
Yeah.
We made tots. Tater tots.
Nice.
Would you like one of my chicken tenders?
Yes.
I would love one of your chicken tenders, bro. I'm a fuck beef for chicken tenders.
A chicken tender sounds good.
Want to know
Same
something funny?
thing as
I
last
completely
time.
forgot about Mario Kart, and I took Luna on an extra long walk today.
Aww.
So I had to rush to get dinner done and shower. Oops. Oopsies.
DK Spaceport.
Sure. Free thinker. Why not?
Sid, do you have Mario Kart World?
Yeah, so you should join us.
I don't,
So hi, Bong Mamon.
don't
I
remember.
don't remember if I
I
said
would-
Or effect.
I should have been the odd one out and picked Airship Fortress.
And then we would have gotten Airship Fortress.
Yeah, because I'm ultra lucky.
Lol.
Uh-huh.
We're going. We're going to the escape sequence in Sonic Adventure 2's Metal Harbor.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Where were they shooting a missile for? Like, where was it
I
going?
don't know. Space. Space.
Space.
There, now I can see the entire screen.
Space.
Yeah.
That's something people usually say.
You could see all of the mini map now. How you feel?
Feel pretty good at it.
Cool.
That's why I usually put my PNG tuber behind my screen. But then when I do that, I'm like, oh, it feels bad to have like half my body covered by the game, but I think ultimately that's better.
And that's why I just ended up with transparency.
Yeah, I was thinking transparency would be a good option.
Ooh.
Well,
think about
I
that.
know I'm not getting hit by a blue shell.
That might not be a bad idea. Oh, well.
Don't slow down.
No.
Please, for me.
Hi, Husk.
No.
I'll give
I'm in
you-
8th place. I'm not slowing down.
I'll give you chicken tender.
You make a
Man, my
retry
brain
bar
is
bar.
really wanting to be lazy and just play games with you, but it's like I'm literally gonna be done with the commission. Might as well finish it now, so I have like the whole next few days just playing games.
Please consider.
You're gonna lose health,
Please let me win.
and you're probably gonna die.
Oh my god, the wait, they changed the
Like,
blue
at least
line
aim for the
first
rat
in
out.
this game in months. Thank god. I got rid of it so quickly.
And it lived,
I love how I was mashing my item button and it just refused.
but I lived.
Anyway, I win.
Alright.
Yeah.
No, I lost to this ugly baby.
Baby Mario?
The one time I
No.
was actually safe in first place because I had the blue shell.
It was that freak baby Daisy.
Wait, you got a blue shell at first?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Now I'll put a rhino in my pocket. Oh my god. You gotta clean your pockets out better.
You're saying
Sid.
bagging is that.
I really like DK Space Force, Sid. It's such a cool map.
Yeah. It's
I feel
really
like that doesn't happen very often.
Oh god, where am I?
Nah, I'm gonna be a different person.
I gotta
don't like
Google
the block.
which map is the one
I'm
that
gonna be a
gives
different
blue-
person is crazy.
I'm gonna go here. Why not? I'm not like the biggest fan of it, but I'll pick it.
Dandelion Duck.
Someone already wants Rainbow Road, huh?
I still
It's
don't
better
have it
be the
unlocked.
transition track to Rainbow Road.
Yeah, if you don't
Not-
pick the transition to Rainbow Road, then like you didn't actually pick Rainbow Road.
Exactly. Wow.
Is it
amazing.
transition to Rainbow Road? No.
Well,
Yeah,
the
it's the
intermission
only
to
good
Rainbow
transition.
Road.
From I
Each day one.
disagree. I disagree. I like Starday Peak to Sky High Sunday. I like that transition track.
That one's neat. Anyway, Warrior Stadium.
Oh shit.
No, they
What-
changed
what?
this one a lot, didn't they?
I mean,
I guess the routing on this one changed a lot. Really.
a little bit. Well, okay, a lot, but
Oh,
like,
for speedruns, you mean?
I'm gonna be that guy. I
Yeah,
don't
they
like Warrior
buffed
Stadium.
wall running, and this one just profits a ton of them.
Oh man, they buffed while running? How? What did they do?
Ow. I messed that
I
up.
don't know. I think you just get better boosts.
Well, whatever I was trying to do, I did.
They should give me a permanent star as a handicap.
I got a golden out of it, so we.
Okay, great. This is AK's fault. Oh wait, I shock dodged. I shock dodged.
Bro.
I didn't say anything.
That's
All
crazy.
according to your plan.
Someone have AK's Game Shark thing.
AK's Game Shark.
Bro? Get an item that's over for me.
I'm not gonna go for it again. I'm just gonna be normal.
Did you know? Who know
Google.
better?
What I was trying to do is like kind of particular, so it's just like, yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah, I don't know all the crazy shortcuts in this game yet. I feel like I'd be a very good player at this.
Well, like what I was trying to do involves
That was me.
the boost off a coin that you collect. That way you can go on the wall. That way
What
you
did I
have
do?
just enough
That
speed to get to the top.
What did I do? You long distance snipe me with your green shell.
I don't have a green shell.
Where did it come from?
Was it a green shell or a gold shell?
The green one.
Green shells are scary in this game, especially with the noise thing.
I always get hit by random green shells that no one ever intended to hit anybody.
Oh yeah, I had that happen to me earlier today. It's like the worst possible spot it could happen in doing DK Pass. I was trying to cut across the corner with a mushroom, and a green shell bounced off the opposite wall and hit me in the middle of the shortcut. And I'm just like,
No way.
Whoa,
Bro, come
okay. That was a scary final turn.
It fucking was.
Of
If I
my
had got
own
the
doing.
mushroom, I would have won, but I got a
No way that hitting the Goomba with a banana doesn't
No!
make the Goomba die. I was like, there's no way I'm getting around this turn without hitting a Goomba.
How
And
did I end up in
did not
10th
hit a
again?
Goomba.
I'm just gonna like put down some property here on 10th place. I think I've been here long enough. I'm gonna go from rent to own.
you gonna put some houses down?
Yeah. Gonna open up a bed and breakfast.
Are you gonna be able to paint the walls without much trouble?
Once I own it, yeah.
Cool. I guess you could be the property's only tenant.
Hmm.
Sorry, when you said bed and breakfast, I can't stop thinking about boobs and.
What's up? Hello?
From what?
That was the alternate title of the commission I got with AK.
Oh my god. Wait, what did you go with?
I didn't give it a title, but like, if
You
I
should have
were
gone
to
with
name
Boobs and
anything,
Breakfast.
that's what it.
His
Yes.
name is Boobs the hyena.
Yes.
Hi, Jekyll.
Oh. I like boobs behind me.
Oops.
Okay, Quinn.
I do love
What?
this.
I think it's theming. If
Oh,
anything.
enjoy my
No.
fucking coin, asshole.
No boobs and breakfast, but we have boo and breakfast.
Boobs and breakfast.
There are worse things to wake up with.
It's
Me
also
when I
better
eat
things to wake
something
up
laced
with.
with estrogen.
There isn't really much I can use this on.
No!
Okay,
Here
Yeah,
comes
it's-
the blue.
I'm getting very sick of being the only person Boo ever targets.
Oh, that was Orc before you joined.
Yeah, because I'm the designated Boo magnet, so without me, it's gonna pick someone else.
Yes, I get to run over Baby Daisy. That's all I ever wanted.
Why the hate swords Baby Daisy specifically?
Oh, she's the only baby here, I think.
Oh, okay.
I hate them all equally. Like, imagine, we could have got, like, a costume for Dried Month, but no, we got Baby Daisy and Rosalinda.
I'm talking shit about Rosalina out of all characters.
Like, bro?
I don't respect her.
I don't respect her.
I didn't appreciate her in the Mario movie. Let's just say that.
I like that she wasn't.
I like
that she
Kiba.
wasn't. It's so funny that she was like genuinely not a factor in the movie for like 80% of the runtime. What did they mean by this?
Hold on, wait, I'm a Peepa stand now.
How's
You
it
got
feel being a
boost-
goat?
Okay.
Actually shock dodged that.
Fuck you,
I think
Sokka!
not with one major wave.
What? You threw a banana at me, bro. What do you mean what?
I was honestly panicking.
Ryan was, What place are you in?
Uh,
Fuck, you're in front of me, aren't you?
I don't want to tell you. I'm in 31st
front of me.
place. Actually, I'm about to be in 31st place after I missed the road.
Yeah, and I probably could have caught up more if I didn't get hit by the item you just threw, so GG. No! Thank you, Green.
Okay, I still made it through. Actually, in higher place than I was before too. I think.
Oh god, I like how it's a simple thing with everyone I ask a
can tell you now,
question
I'm in
to.
eighth place.
I asked two things to my dad. Do you want to leave it like that, or do you wanna me to actually lock it
Is it
and whatnot?
right?
And he
I
goes,
should say-
yes. I'm like,
I should say this,
oh my fucking god.
this on
I asked
the
two things in one
I
sentence.
think that the better Illumination movie to release this year was Minions, and I'm not joking.
Oh wow.
From what I've heard, yeah, that one was surprisingly good. From what I've heard.
Yeah, can we watch it again?
I saw the first Mario movie. I didn't care for it, so I didn't bother seeing the second one.
Like, I think that the Mario movie sequel, it was a fun, like, Mario thing, but, like, as a movie.
That's what I felt about the first. I'm like, okay, this is nice for people who want a lot of Mario references, but that's kind of all it had to go for it.
It's not a very good movie, but it's
Or just
fun.
for like probably just
micro
shit for show.
Yeah, it's a fun movie rather than like one that's actually critically good.
Or it's just to notify, hey, that thing is taking effect. Basically, like a visual.
I don't want to say it was the best thing ever or anything like
fucking
that. but it was
shit. What do you call that shit?
I don't know what the recent Minion movies are like. I know that I liked the Despicable Me movies, and the only thing that made the Minions movies memeable were, well, the memes.
We should thank Leslie for taking us. to
Yeah,
the Minions movie.
our friend Leslie took like our entire group at AC to go see the Minions movie
That's so
on the
cool.
last day.
That's so fun.
She is an unironic Minions like fanatic. So
That's good.
Nice.
Wait, which map is this?
We're going to Dandelion Depths.
Oh, this is the transitionary map. Okay.
Yeah.
I saw her art on my timeline, and I was going to be like, well, look who drawn it.
Take that, Salto.
Alright, BRB.
through that bomb because it destroyed my. Wait, I unlocked Pipa. I didn't have Pipa.
Congrats.
Isn't that just what it's called?
I have a new penguin.
Hey, you want to go down, woman?
At least I call it Great Correction Block Ruins. I know some people. Call it something like that, like
Why do you have to be so far away?
block. I just call it Correction Block because.
Oi! Oi!
Sorry to the people who just fell off the road.
Yeah, that initial turn.
That wasn't me.
That spiral is.
Okay, I guess I missed that. I hate the power of the shortcuts on this one, by the way.
I'm still not good at. Like. The
I'm
one
never
before.
bothered with it, but yeah, you can do this from below that section.
Dozer, hey.
So just no.
I wish I knew how to do it better. Like I've tried practicing it, but like it's inconsistent.
I think you need to get into it with a mushroom.
No, I don't think you do. I think I've seen people try
I
to.
see a lot of people go into it with a mushroom.
Oh,
Did they
okay,
nerf
Gabe.
the bullet bow?
Bro, hate that fucking turn.
Well, okay.
Somebody was looking out for me there.
I guess the Woozy fell off.
I missed it again. How does that one just not suck me out on everywhere it is?
The dog sat wide. Well, I'm assuming at least Woozy's gaming.
Hey, Coast.
No!
The gentleman's eighth.
A gentle werewolf.
No! I knew that was gonna happen the second I used the Starman. and yet I didn't listen to myself.
That draw speed.
Yep, that's a.
That was really,
No.
that was really good timing on your part, Quinn.
Victory!
Nice shot.
GG.
Yeah, no, I got punched way first off.
I still keep clicking my remote.
I'll take pulling out of 18 to 6.
A Gentle Wolf's 9th.
I know, right, Ruzy? That was close.
Alright, goddamn. From Software, even to this day, I mean, I hope they change, but they've been using the same engine for a long ass time.
Next.
I'm really curious to see what engine they're gonna be using for like their future games. I know Dux Plus is still using the old engine that they have.
But there's another beach we haven't done yet, but I'm picking the 3-lap variant of it.
So, do the graphics still look good for its art style, or?
No, I'm just kind of moved through. Oh, 4 or 5, I mean, technically.
Because I'm assuming it's the choice of art style they went with. Because I hear people say it's like, oh, From Software doesn't look good. I'm like, what the fuck you mean it doesn't look good? It looks amazing. If you're not, like,
Crab racing instincts.
they say they could say the graphics.
So when are we gonna get Orion in a crab outfit?
Never.
But like, From Software has a different art style. I wouldn't say the graphics are bad, but they're actually pretty good. If you're not a fan of the art style, then that's what they. It depends on the area, but yeah, some areas may be like dark and gritty because that's the tone they wanted for that specific area. Other times it's like colorful. Elden Ring has a lot of color into it, depending on what areas you visit. What's glowing on you?
Stay away from you, beast.
Oh,
Look, it's my brethren, the cat.
Tears of Denial.
It's always funny when I get hit by a blue shell. Is this?
Wow, a
Yeah.
blooper.
Because I'm never in first.
Oh no, I can't see. Help.
Wow. Ah! Yeah. See what I mean? How they're the most annoying enemy right there.
That was so worth it, actually. Holy shit.
No.
Shut up.
Let's see. Hey.
That's just the first item I saw on my screen from the back.
But I also got a golden mushroom.
Hey, well, that's not bad. Arguably better. Depending on where you are.
I think golden mushroom is just like objectively better, no?
Yeah,
Especially in this game.
I mean, I think it's due to your weight right there that you have.
Your mushroom support shell?
Don't bouncing on it. And by it, I mean my head.
Welcome.
I still
mushroom
remember
support shell
porting
did
this in
not
AK
save me.
not knowing what that meant. Bro.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you're right. Still really
Oh, the Black Knights? Yeah.
Dang it.
I love how I've hit you with like 3 things around and none of them actually made you
Lothray Castle.
From first to 7, a crab story.
What did you get?
7.
No.
I don't think those are Black Knights, they're just the White Knights.
to go have to pick it up physically, Splatoon Raiders.
Mhm.
Have to go after work.
I just hope that mine actually comes on day of. Apparently it should, but
Yeah, I'm worried about it not
It'd be
coming
nice. Those are
day
good.
of, even though I'm probably not going to play it the day of.
Yeah, I'm playing it on like the Monday or at least planning on playing it the Monday after.
My Monday.
Because I'm making it like a stream playthrough, and Mondays are usually one of my days for that.
Oh.
Oh, 3-lap DK?
Yeah, proper DK pass. Let's see if I can do the fucking pole jump this time.
Barely.
Getting pushed out of the way.
Final race. I'm gonna wait and do it when I'm not in the crowd. Like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think you see.
Oh, where'd you come from? Oh, goodness.
Yeah, fun fact, I learned that from an NPC when I was doing shows.
What? NPCs are taking shortcuts?
Yes!
That's crazy.
A CPU used that shortcut.
No, that's so talented.
They can make a harder Mario Kart game. They can make a harder Yoshi game. No more of this baby shit.
Wow.
Oh, Blue Shoulder didn't hit Quinn.
That's fucking crazy. Oh my god, I still made the jump. That was crazy.
Yoo-hoo! I made it too.
Yeah, it counts as my exactly at the wrong time.
I made the jump mid-transformation. I was so prepared
that,
to fucking
Toadette.
die instantly.
What did you do to Toadette?
I hit her with a green shell.
Yay.
Does she deserve for being a Union Buster?
We
She's
can
a
pretend
Union
that
Buster?
Toadette is AK. Yeah. In
Toadette
Mario
is
Maker 2. In
Who
Mario Maker
dats?
2, she's a Union Buster.
Oh
I'm not
my God.
joking.
She's in it, I see.
Woman is wrong.
Can we stop with the hammers?
Dang it. Yeah, not worth it. Not
Me
worth it.
going to
No, I
Nintendo
fell off
Land.
it. Wall just crashed.
No, I forgot there's a turn there.
I failed to jump again.
I got pushed. Thanks.
Would have made the jump too if someone didn't eventually kill themselves.
Kamikaze strike. Soda, give me your stuff. Thanks,
My
Soda.
question is, what exactly makes this a DK map?
I don't know.
DK is just got the skiing maps.
Yeah.
Wasn't he like really angry when those penguins took over and froze everything?
Doesn't change that he gets the skiing maps.
Whoa.
I think he's a kind of a fraud.
Roddy Tom.
I mean, to be fair, like the original version of DK Pass doesn't really have much DK theming in general. Yeah, Woozy Tide. All right, cool. Yay. the Woos.
Is that a
win, I
Goomber?
guess.
Yeah, it's a Goomber.
Goober.
Well, well, well. Ryan, look what you did.
And I'll do it again.
You sent me down to 10th. How does it feel?
Fantastic.
Evil.
No regrets.
How will-
We'll do it again.
How will Orion think about it? It's tentative.
Someone please relock the crab for him. So he can't be
Isn't the crab base?
I think.
I don't remember having to unlock the crab. I think I had it.
You can no longer play as Crab.
No.
Yeah. I told what's his face to remove him from the game. He'll be gone.
Miyamoto.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a pipe down here. Huh.
Oh, I did the fucking shortcut.
I think
Finally, I didn't
Corey
fall off.
never race with Orion again. Yeah.
It's okay. You can be a different character that isn't the crab. You can be the dolphin.
I don't have the dolphin yet.
No, get the dolphin. You know, there's like a video that someone made ranking the Mario Kart characters and costumes in this game, and they put dolphin last, and I was very offended.
It doesn't wear clothes.
They tried to use the logic of like, it doesn't sit in the car properly, and I'm like, technically neither does like the cheap or fishbone, yet you make them higher. Plus the dolphin's cuter, like.
Maybe if you like put mustard on that thing, it's kind of like a hot dog.
No. Don't put mustard on the dolphin.
Do the hot dog, he's my precious boy.
Okay, fine. Ketchup and onions as well, and maybe some relish. Dress them up really nice. We're still waiting on Dan to give Orcane a hot dog skin in Rivals 2.
Lol. Is everybody ready to do another one?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.